You're responsible for this? The raisins? No? Okay. Who? All right. So everyone in my Twitch channel, one of these people did this. All right. People on my Twitch channel know that I hate raisins, and recently I had a Kickstarter where one of the goals was that I would actually eat a small little snack box of raisins. This is charming and wrong. The party will pay the ultimate pit. No. All right. So let me welcome everybody, first of all, to the concluding portion of the trilogy Beyond the Forbidden Library. My name is Gregory Wilson. I am your Master of Ceremonies and the Dungeon Master for this intrepid crew that I'm about to introduce to you in just a moment. Let me just mention a couple of things up front. The first is that this is the third part of an adventure, so we will try to give you a very quick summary of what happened in parts 1 and 2. But if there are things that you're kind of like, I've never heard that name before, please see previous videos for stuff that you might have missed.
As a spoiler, we survived.
Yes, clearly we survived, that's true. And also, you will find this again on the way out the door. And then the last thing, of course, is to please give all of your best level of support to the intrepid group of adventurers you see before you. Can we get a round of applause for the amazing players? All authors from the symposium, and I will begin with one of the intrepid leaders of the Writers' Symposium. Kelly, could you introduce yourself and your character?
Oh, yes, my name is Kelly Swales. I'm one of the co-directors of the Writers' Symposium. Also a writer, editor, and all-around fun gal. I actually forget my character's name. Oh, Garvin. I'm Garvin. I play a dwarf cleric. I get framed for not helping people allegedly. But I am not responsible for those other people's positions around me or my axes, of which I have 2.
Good times. I cannot wait to see those axes in use, and I'm sure Beth can do it. Moving right along, we have, of course, Mr. David Alamack. David, good to see you. And again, who are you for the audience, and who are you playing?
Hi, I'm David Mack. I'm an author of a lot of different novels, a whole bunch of stuff for Star Trek, and I am playing Cadmus Respar, human fighter. He likes to punch people in the nuts, it says. What it does, tends to spill things on himself when eating or drinking, and rebels against his noble upbringing by being crude and blunt. He hates hypocrites.
Good stuff. I cannot wait to see more of punching places. And moving right along, we have of course, USA Today best-selling author, Elizabeth Vaughn. Hello, Beth, how are you? And who are you to the audience, and who are you playing?
I play Corinna Proudborough, halfling monk, and I have a deep, abiding suspicion of clerics wielding axes.
And why do you have this suspicion?
You call?
There's no party tension at all.
No.
In the past, 2 adventures has rolled a critical fail and has failed on me with an axe, throwing it into my back and almost killing me. But my friend the paladin says the cleric doesn't know how to heal people.
You weren't dead. You were never dead.
If you wait until they're dead, it's too late.
She made a funny
dying.
And
I think the comment I made last time is, nobody actually dies in 5e.
that was right before the axe hit you. Moving right along too, said Paladin, it is my pleasure to welcome Dylan Bertolo back to the crew. Welcome. Dylan, tell the fine people if they don't know who you are and who you play.
I'm Dylan Bertol, and I'm out. So I'm a writer. I've written a lot of stuff. I'm also a game designer and professional sword swinger, which is the most fun one to say. I am playing Shala Skyblade, human paladin, and I am resistant to knowledge.
Yeah.
And I know,
It really is.
for
It's
a
really
fact, the entire reason the Harpers were there was to recruit me.
Yeah.
That
No, I
was all.
forgot
Yeah, we're
about
not
that.
there to recruit you.
They're coming back,
You know that.
and we're not in a relationship anymore.
Yeah, it's been a tough year apparently. We'll find out more about that as we get to Mr. Aaron
We can skip
Rosenberg.
this one.
No, we can never skip Mr. Aaron Rosenberg. Aaron, welcome back again. Tell us who you are for those who do not know, and please those who claim to.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rosenberg. I am a novelist, children's book author, and game designer. I am playing Kelixin Brightscale, a dragonborn sorcerer. Formerly, Kelixin was considered the teacher's pet. That was later revealed to be due to blackmail by the teacher. She has since been free to let her smart fly, and she has absolutely no idea what the Paladin is talking about because they have never been in a relationship.
Lies.
Ever.
Lies.
And last but certainly not least, of course, Karen Bovenmeyer is here as well. Karen, please let everyone know who you are and who you're playing today.
Hi, my name is Karen Bovenmeyer. This is my 22nd Gen Con. And I like to think that I'm the writing symposium's mascot.
You know what? We can get t-shirts made.
A t-shirt.
I'll buy one.
I write novels and short stories and poems, and I am a teacher. And I'm the assistant editor of the Pseudopod Horror Podcast.
Very, very awesome. It is my great pleasure to have shepherded this crew, or to have been there while they shepherded themselves, through the first two installments of this adventure. I want to give you
We didn't hear who she's playing.
You did.
I didn't say my person.
Okay, that was all her. I'm sorry. That was the only part that really mattered. Was her. I care about the person there. I'm sorry. Who are you?
I am playing Lassen Shadowborn, who started the drama club at school. He is a exiled dark elf because he is a fun and friendly roguish type who really always wanted to join the circus and be an acrobat, but his parents were not big fans of that. He ran away to the service world and faced a lot of anti-drow sentiments in our school. And
It's a drama club.
And there's lots of drama.
You all know that you want to join.
No.
It's really a drama club.
No.
Thank you.
I also
And
feel-
take it away.
I also feel it's important to point out to certain people who think no one dies in 15. Since this is the final installment of the trilogy,
We could all
there's no
die.
reason to keep us alive.
We're all fired after this, so.
I'll just prepare myself. You might be right. I'm just kidding. I was gonna say yes.
Little did the audience
So-
realize that this is also an escape room. Only 15 of you are going to get out of here.
And a shelter. All right, so let me set the scene a little bit for all of you. These folks are all students at the Magical Academy, which is the setting for this particular adventure. 2 years ago, they were adventurers in training at this academy, and 2 years ago, they were sort of the troublemakers of the group for various reasons, and they were given detention. This detention was assigned to them by Mr. Vernon Richard, who was the assistant head of school, a very nasty man that nobody likes, but he's the assistant head of school, so everybody has to listen to people like that. And so as a consequence, this group of people ended up being sent on detention into the eastern wing of the library, which is more popularly known as the Forbidden Library, because of something terrible which had happened 20 years before, and it caused the wing of the library to be shut down. What the party discovered when they actually went into that library, sent there by Vernon Richard, is that actually the reason it had been closed down was because of what are you doing? Seriously. What?
Trash can.
I was trying to calm down.
Oh, I just see him wander around. This is what I mean. He's just showing the troublemaker, right? So that was what it was. When they went into the Eastern Wing, the Forbidden Library, they discovered that the reason it had been shut down is because a student had been killed there, and killed there by none other, as they discovered, than Vernon Richard himself when he was a teacher 20 years before. And so, having gathered that information, the party decided not to destroy this character who had risen as a revenant, an incredibly powerful force. They decided not to destroy him, and instead to preserve his spirit and to reveal Richard. They did so at this massive school celebration. Richard was angry and wished to destroy them, but was stopped by the head of school, one Thaddeus Celeritas, who had Vernon Richard arrested, and the spirit of the revenant was at peace. That leads us to last year. Last year, the trial took place of this same Vernon Richard, and the party was there as star witnesses, having been a part of this whole process. But in the process of doing this, Vernon Richard attempted, with the help of an accomplice, and they don't know who this accomplice is, they managed to escape, to use a terrible magical artifact known as a Megirolith, which was designed to suck all the magic out of the surrounding area. Not just the academy, as it turned out, but much of the surrounding city. This would have had profoundly devastating effects to the surrounding land, in fact. And the only salvation was the fact that Thaddeus Celeritas created a very powerful spell that sent the party far back in time to basically the origins of when this place was first built, and see if they could find some way to rectify the problem of Megirolith in the present. They did go into the past. They solved a series of tests in this temple, which is what the thing was before it became an academy, solved a series of tests, and managed to destroy the power of the Megirolith. This tree, basically, that they had grown in the past, grew to consume and take the screaming Vernon Richard below the surface of the floor back in the present, thus averting total disaster. And that brings us forward to the present day. It has been 1 year since the incident of the trial took place. And again, this accomplice that helped Richard still remains at large. And the characters, who were all Hearthglow Academy students, are preparing for their final examinations and graduation before beginning their adventuring careers. And all of you have been summoned to the office of the new assistant head of school, Vernon Richard's replacement, a woman named Yennefer Chalice. Yennefer Chalice is relatively young. She was herself a former student at Hearthglow, and she is generally considered to be reasonably popular. She's a much nicer person than Richard is, and she seems to have tried to avoid the mistakes that he made because they ended up having to be consumed by a tree. So, you don't really want to do that. And so she's gone in a different route. She keeps, however, personal contact with the students to a minimum. And in fact, neither she nor head of school Thaddeus Celeritas had been seen for several days before this adventure begins. So you have been summoned to meet with her, and you are now standing in her office, and she is looking out the window of her office at a fountain in the garden beyond. The hood of her official cloak is down, revealing her dark hair, and after a moment she sighs and turns to them. And I want to point out to the party that she looks weary. Her brown eyes have dark circles around them as if she has not slept for some time. And she says, as you're all standing, she says, "Be seated." And she sits down herself. She invites you to sit.
Use the chairs. Come seat.
We said.
Use the house one.
She says, "You've had an eventful time here at Hearthglow, especially over the last several years, but you've come through all of it admirably, despite some tendencies to unusual behavior. Yet without your unique qualities, there's a good chance neither the school or even the city beyond it would be the same. I was looking forward to celebrating commencement with the students next week, and especially with all of you, but fate seldom flows as we expected, and least of all it seems when you are concerned." She leans back in her chair. "You might have noticed that head of school Thaddeus Celeritas has not been seen for the last few days, nor have I. That is because he went missing almost a week ago, and neither I nor the other instructors have been able to find him. Head Celeritas is often away for a day or two here or there during the course of the year, so I wasn't concerned at first. But when we reached the third day with no word from him, especially this close to the end of the school year, I became worried. And there is more." She looks out the window again. "Several professors and I finally decided we had to discover what happened, and we broke into the head's room. But there was only a simple mechanical lock on the door. There were no magical wards to overcome, there were no traps to avoid, and when we entered, we found the room in shambles. Books everywhere, the desk overturned, the mattress ripped and torn, scorch marks on the walls. Obviously there had been a fight, but no one heard it, nor did any of the school's magical wards prevent it. And the head of the school is, she corrects herself quickly, an exceptional mage. There are few who could face him in a contest of magical talent and survive. That means the person or persons who took him are powerful in their own right, and may even have known of the school's defenses and how to bypass them. I have spent the last 2 days," she says, "looking for head Celeritas, but with no success, and now time is running short. Our commencement ceremonies are only a few days away, and the head of school will of course be expected to preside. If he is not there, questions will be asked. And after the events of the past 2 years, Hearthglow Academy is already looked at with suspicion by the officials and residents of this city. If Thaddeus Celeritas is discovered to have been taken, or worse, the consequences will be catastrophic. I doubt if he will be allowed to remain within the city's walls at all. Which leads me to you. I can spend no further time in the search, My absence has already excited comment, and a school official of some kind needs to be present to prevent any further questions. Besides, I am conspicuous, and despite your relative stature within the school, your reputation means that your absence would not be particularly surprising. And I feel certain that you have some central role to play in all of this, as you have since the beginning.
It is our destiny.
I agree. So I am asking you to find the head of school and to bring him back, or at least bring back news of his whereabouts. We will provide basic supplies and assistance as you depart. We will clear the matter with your teachers and, if necessary, other students. If you are successful, your stature in this school will be unmatched, to say nothing of the benefit to your reputations as you begin your adventuring careers. If you fail, then...
We will not fail. I leave and start the search.
Wait, then
I
She says, we must try. Please help us. And then she waits. If you have questions, you tap in.
Yeah, I still want to hear the or what part. If we fail, then
Then the pieces must fall where they may.
we're not the ones who disappeared them. This is our problem.
Is anyone else like suspicious that she killed Thaddeus?
Well,
Are you saying that right out loud? Wow, you are not a diplomat.
I'm appalled!
Well, our history with our prior, teachers has not really been a good one, so to speak. So we are naturally suspicious.
we are
Master
naturally.
Shella,
What's
Master
that?
Shella, can we have access to the headmaster's quarters so we can examine the damage?
You may indeed do so if you wish. And I
And the
believe I
vault,
have
so
other
we can
leads.
examine the damage.
And I have leads that I can give you, some of which we found if need be.
Yes, please. All that you have.
That would be
And
good.
where were you on the night of the 14th?
Well, do you ask her that? Okay.
How do you open this door?
So what's that? Are you still trying to open the door?
Yeah.
So and you notice that the door is not open to your entreaty of opening it, by which I mean you're just like, why? It doesn't, It's just,
It says push.
Well, you just a little gifted.
it doesn't, no. She's resolutely not paying attention to your attempt to depart as she does this. She pulls out from her desk a thick tree branch with green needles along its length. Looks like almost like a pine tree branch.
Quick, kill
And
it.
she says, do you recognize where this comes from? She sort of holds it out to all of you.
Oh, wasn't that at the place with the thing?
Yeah.
Where we went that time. We'll never forget.
It was the tree.
The thing.
It's very knowledge or something.
And
Too
she
much change
says,
resistant.
Yeah.
are you rolling for something? Or
If there's anything extra to notice about it, or.
if you want to make a nature check for me, you can see it does not look like a particular tree you've encountered before in a previous experience, let us say.
Well, being a dark elf, I don't really have nature knowledge.
You might have dark
If
nature.
you would tell us.
Yeah, fell nature.
If it was moss, I'd be good. A 10?
It doesn't, it seems odd. It seems like it's some kind of evergreen, but not, you don't know anything in particular about this type. But it does seem to be particularly like it looks almost kind of ominous. Like the needles are sort of, they look very sharp almost, and kind of the branch itself is twisted, and it seems a little bit troubling to all of you. And she sort of waits, and seeing that people don't really know, she says, this comes from a forest known as the Southern Expanse. Now, this you do know about. The Southern Expanse is more popularly known as the Emerald Darkness because it is a place where it is dense and difficult, and many avid hunters and explorers have gone there and never been seen again. In fact, most of the time they avoid it when possible.
Can we just send Dylan's character there?
Right. And she looks over and she sees Dylan still still trying to like open the door and says, I don't know if that's wise. He seems to have difficulty with wooden objects, like, opening, closing.
Glass, my nemesis, wood.
Wooden latches. So she says, this comes from many of the trees which are found directly in that forest. And any portal created from the outside leaves a residue of its origin. I found this branch, such a residue, in Thaddeus Celeritas' office, and such a strong residue would not have been left by accident. Almost certainly the head of school himself figured out a way to send this from wherever he ended up. and if I'm correct, the southern expanse, but there are no guarantees. It's possible someone left this here to throw us off the trail. It's possible following the lead will waste precious time that we don't have, but we have no other real possibilities of places to look.
Road trip.
Possible, we're standing on a tree.
I'll ask, have you already searched this place or no?
She says, we found, oh, sorry, the forest? You mean?
Yeah, the forest.
No, we have not been able to go there for long. In fact, the branch was only a recent discovery. Most of the things that we spent our time doing was trying to track down magical traces that would lead somewhere, but they all cut off at the school's walls. It's as if someone teleported inside, did something, took him away with them, and then no magic residue remained, even a trace, except for this branch.
Do any of Master Thaddeus's past associates, thank you, have any connections to the Southern Expanse or Emerald Darkness?
And she says, this is a question that we ourselves have asked. Thaddeus Celeritas was a widely traveled mage. We cannot know every place that he went and was. It is conceivable that he knew people from the Southern Expanse or creatures there, but certainly none that taught at the school that we are aware of. There are few people who live there, at least civilized ones at all. It is mostly a place for some intrepid explorers around the outside and deadly creatures within.
How far is it from here?
She says, it is probably a day and a half's travel, but I believe we can actually transport you there directly if you wish.
At last, a way that doesn't involve this plastic.
Do any of his writings in the last few years involve the Emerald Expanse? Like his wizard dissertation or something? I'm not really know.
Let's see, can I make a roll against history to see if that jogs my memory about the Southern Expanse?
Sure, you can do that if you wish.
All right, I have history +3
Okay.
and intelligence of 13.
Okay.
And I don't think I got it. I got it.
You got a 4?
I got
You
it.
know that there are expanses and they are southern.
All right. I'm feeling good. I feel confident in my knowledge of
You
this
feel
subject.
comfortable about this moment.
You're relieved to have you around here.
In answer to your question, Madison,
This is a deliberately.
it is the case that that Celeritas wrote rather extensively, but Celeritas almost, and this is not surprising for frankly many wizards and mages, kept a lot of his material to himself. The public knowledge stuff is stuff which deals more with sort of like the abstract aspects of how to cast magic and things like this, but not so much about his particular findings in a particular location. Most of his recent stuff is about being the head of school.
Well, are they letting us go to the room now? to take a
Now,
look?
before we go, one last question. Trying to see if the motivation here would have been vengeance or profit. I'm just curious. If we don't find Thaddeus and he doesn't come back, who stands to gain?
She thinks about it and she says, the person who most stands to gain is whoever wishes to see this school destroyed. Thaddeus had his own relationship with the city. If he vanishes, certainly my elevation to the position will do nothing to save this school. We will die if we are sent outside of these city walls. Students will not come to us anymore. The only one who would have motivation is one who had something against Celeritas himself or wants this school shut down for good.
All right, then. We should probably check out the quarters, so we all agree.
Yeah, sure. Agree.
All right, so
Here,
then-
let me help you with that door.
Thank you.
so do
No,
you
I
go
can live
over?
with.
Yeah.
Done.
So do you go over and go to the door?
Yeah.
So you go over, it opens up.
Brilliant.
We all breathe out in a line, Pat Shaw.
One at a time, right?
Last
That's
one,
you.
linger and ask one more question.
Okay.
Has anyone been wanting to buy the school grounds?
And
And
she
build a
says,
suburb or
Oh,
something?
you think it's a real estate deal?
she says,
There could be a magical mob at work here, I don't know.
she
This
says,
is in Shanghai.
she says, no, there has been no interest in actually wanting to purchase it. Although there have certainly been many residents who have suggested that we do not need a dangerous place like this within the city's walls. Perhaps they'd like to see the school gone, and then the whole thing razed to the ground and kept fallow so nothing else could grow up evil here.
It's the Orient Express, they all did.
Yeah.
All right, so all of you travel then to Celeritas Quarters. And when you walk into Celeritas Quarters, indeed, as was described, the place is an absolute wreck. I mean, the mattress is torn up, desk is overturned, papers all over the floor, there are scrapes and scratches, and it looks very much like there was a violent battle. Also, I mentioned the scorch marks, those are everywhere. Clearly there was fire being rained back and forth and the whole 9 yards, and yet all of this done without anybody noticing outside the room.
So by scorch marks everywhere, you mean all of, because you said something about the curtains being burned, so like all the way up to the ceiling?
Close, like at least halfway. So like all the way up to like above the height of, like 6.5 feet up or maybe more, right? Somewhere up there as well.
Question about the scorch marks. Do they look like they're explosions that came out from a central point, leaving something there and then spreading outward, or do they look like slashing scorch marks, like something burning slashed across?
I would say it's more like that, and there are multiple ones, as if there were multiple.
Slashing?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
did something detonate to create them, or did something slash?
no, it seems like something was, almost imagine a flaming
Whip, a
line
flaming
of flames
sword?
sort of swept over. No, not a flaming sword.
Something
More like flame being shot at something.
a jet of flame.
Yes.
I figured it out.
Oh, Shala.
There was a fight.
Well, that's it, everybody. Let's all. Let's all go to lunch.
Yeah, we're done. All right.
Last time I looked at his desk to try and find out what the last thing he was writing is.
Make an investigation check for me, please, Leslie.
I have that.
I know.
13.
Okay. So the papers and quills and all that are just a hopeless mess. You do find some scrapes in the wood that might indicate as if someone were sort of writing on a piece of paper that kind of, the marks kind of got through the wood a little bit, but it's been so slashed and ripped since then that it's impossible to tell what it was. But it seems like there was stuff being written on that desk, but he had the desk for a long time, he may have written on it for a long time.
Lanson's going to take a piece of paper and try to do a little charcoal rubbing with the charcoal from the...
Okay.
the,
Yeah, so I'll have you do that. You were
Is
going
there a
to
bookcase in here?
say? There is. The books on it are completely destroyed, but yes.
I want book the books.
You want to do what, sir?
Book the books.
Okay.
We have had
We have had
magical
bad
book
experiences with books.
That is not as crazy as it sounds.
We've gotten in trouble for booking books before, so.
Yes. Yeah, the books do not shift or move other than your, so they seem to be quite dead books.
No one will be hitting us with
Dead
any
tree books, if you will. Yeah. So when you try to do your charcoal rubbing lesson on it, what comes out basically is just a hopeless mess of, nothing. Like you maybe think you see like it's impossible to tell. One thing you do know, however, is that there are no scorch marks on the desk. Everything around it, on all the walls and all that stuff, but not necessarily on the desk, as if the fight took place around it, not on it.
Are there any signs that something had been on the desk and was burnt, like little pieces of crumbly burnt things?
No, it doesn't look like it. A lot of those papers are already on the ground that might have been on the desk or elsewhere. Yeah.
Any windows in here?
No.
I joined Larson at the desk. Does the area that is undamaged around the desk seem like it's defined like a round area, or does it just seem like the desk itself has escaped harm?
It seems like the desk itself has escaped harm.
I try to move the desk, but to see if it shifts at all.
Make a strength check. If you've got athletics, I'll take that.
I do have athletics +5. Strength of 16. And that's not good. Wow, this is a heavy desk.
Like this is strong, good quality maple, right?
Yeah, this is solid wood. You better stay clear.
Yeah.
It's all about the same.
I didn't see that coming.
Do we have any evidence that he was creating, any evidence that he was into creating portals or creating other beings or trying to create
New formulas of Coke.
something?
He has definitely made portals in the past because he traveled in many different places to recruit new teachers, find new curriculum, also to do mage stuff and wizard stuff. So he definitely did that. As far as creating beings and things like that, not that you're aware of, but it's possible.
Can I try to,
I was gonna say, so would it be possible if there was a portal residue that maybe we could feel it or sense it or something, even though I'm sure that the other teachers looked, maybe that we can sense something that they didn't.
You're absolutely willing to do that. Also, I should mention that Yenner Chalice has suggested that she would transport you using the residue that's in this room. So the portal would actually open from you if you were going to do that. So it would be leading you, you would feel where you're being led to is the point.
Can we open the drawers of the desk?
Sure, although most of them are open already.
They're already open.
Yeah, and there's nothing in them anymore.
Alright.
It's just all over the place.
Is there anything under the desk? Can we look like under the surface of the desk, like maybe if something is taped or
Make
something?
an investigation check for me, sure.
Probably 15.
There doesn't seem to be anything under the desk, no bubble gum. Also, there doesn't seem to be anything taped underneath it as well. The desk is very, very solid and heavy. Also, you notice that the desk, in comparison to the room around just feels a little bit warm, not because there was a,
Flaming
flame
fire?
or something, but the desk still feels cool. Like if you just put your hand on it, the wood feels cool. Everything about the desk feels cool in comparison to the surrounding air.
Did you say there was bubble gum?
I said there was not bubble gum.
You said Clarendon was allergic.
I was making a silly joke about teachers' desks that I know something about with bubble gum.
I dig through the rest of the room as rebel just to make sure we're not missing anything underneath all of the destruction and
Okay.
scattered junk.
Yeah, as you dig through most of it, you find more or less, that one you don't have to make a check for. Most of the stuff that you find there is stuff you would expect to see in a room like this. Lots of books, lots of papers. There are a couple of shattered pieces of glass that look like they came from like glass vials and things like that. Yeah, there's a few Kit Kats, like this, standard stuff that you might find out there. But nothing specific.
Just making sure we don't miss anything important.
Would a sorcerer maybe be able to tell if the desk was treated with an anti-fire spell or something?
Would, I'm sorry.
Would a sorcerer or wizard be able to use a
Special surprise.
spell knowledge?
Yes.
There are some raisins in the Kit Kat bag.
Those must be for you.
Did you bring the raisins, Beth?
Oh.
I will find out. The price for vengeance.
It was Clarendon.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's the people who make the Kit Kats must have
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally.
They also produce raisins.
Happens all the time, yeah. Okay, so if you were to try to find, have the sorcerer try to find like residue basically, or if it was treated with an anti-fire spell, that's what you asked about?
Yep.
Okay. Sure, you can make an arcana check for me if you'd like to check that out.
Yes, that would be me.
Ooh.
Oh, pretty good. I'm adding my, is that wisdom? That's a wisdom, right, or intelligence?
You actually have to do it.
Well, yeah, that's 18.
Okay. So it does seem to be, you can't detect specific kinds of magic that it's radiating, but it does seem to be magic that is resonating differently than some of the other magic in the room. So it does seem like something was done to the desk. But it seems like a relatively faint aura, not like a, really powerful, but it seems that it's definitely distinct to the desk.
Yep, there's something in the desk.
The desk is suspicious.
Yes, you should question it closely.
All right, Jess, what's your story?
I think we should try to move it again.
Somebody want to give me a hand?
Yeah, sure.
I think there was something on the desk. that-
I'll allow one person to try to move it, the other person can assist them. So,
All right, well, my strength modifier is what, 16? No, wait.
I got 18.
18, okay, so
Oh, yeah,
if you're
plus
gonna,
two, so-
What are you doing?
that's fine, and also you can add, so go ahead and if you wanna make a roll, if you make a successful one, I'll allow them to add a bonus.
Oh, no, I rolled a 2.
So Lassen with his little stick arms is watching these people do this and says to them, maybe there was something on the desk that the attackers didn't want destroyed in the attack, so they protected it and then took it and him.
Or maybe it's just a really heavy
Can I
desk.
just hit, can I
And
just
then
hit
and Lassen will try and help. Let's just see if it, he
Yeah, go ahead and help, and then I'll come back to Charlotte, I know is moving, it's having to move the desk.
18.
And then strongly help, so you can get a +3 to that, so that means 21. So, the desk position.
The desk, wait, the desk resists?
Desk,
Desk
nope.
resists?
Desk is like, I'm not moving.
All right.
It doesn't actually say that.
Check for traps.
Can I hit the desk with my axe?
I'm
Hey,
shocked.
we're not a demolition,
So So Yenna Shala sees you pull out your axe and is like, "What are you doing?" Like staring at you.
Well, we figure we'll clear the room out, get rid of the furniture, you can rent it out.
Is it standard policy to protect the desks in case of accident or something that someone's working on?
She says, "Well, for some of the senior professors, yes."
And call me the dumb one.
Because you are.
That's beside the point.
But the desk is like resisting us moving it.
She says, "Well, it generally is designed to be resistant to damage, I believe." She kind of gives you a.
Let's make sure.
Where the hell is that from?
She said she seems very much like, yeah.
No, all right.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Let's gear up.
It also might have been someone
Pack
who's
a
sitting
lunch.
at the desk when they used fire, which is why that area is not burning.
Hang on, gotta warm up my hands.
Wait, what?
We're not leaving yet, we
The
gotta go
person
and gear
using
up.
fire was at the desk. The desk would be burned and everything around it would.
Right. Probably.
Are you straightening yourself?
Yup.
She gets all the credit there is to be had for this one observation. We're gonna be hearing about this all night. Remember the desk? It'll be the rallying cry. You know, I'm gonna say, remember lunch, so before we go to the Southern Waste, we're gonna go get some rations.
Oh, I got your picture.
Okay. So you gather together the rations. They are actually prepared. They've actually been working in the kitchen, and they have some delicious rations prepared for you.
Nice of them.
One thing you notice though is that not just the inner Chalice, but you notice that a few of the other professors go along with you, and you notice that as they're going, they seem anxious to avoid students noticing you going one way or the other. And as you're going to the kitchen and coming back, the inner Chalice explains that again, they don't want it to be obvious that you're going off on this big thing because they don't want to draw attention to it. So this is very much as she points out, a secret mission. And she looks at you in particular, Charlie, secret.
Last character. Oh God, I hope he wasn't a student.
Lassen had just come out of his dorm room wearing a full motley with big jingle bells, ready to go on the road.
She looks at you, looks at Lassie and is like,
Oh.
Oh, that's his flying outfit.
Yeah.
But I'm ready to perform for the wider world.
Yes, and she will solve this with interpretive dance if we give her a chance.
Very fire.
On the plus side, the school will no longer have a drama club.
she says, "Well, I'm sure it will all work out fine." And so when you come back with her back to the room, she says, are you prepared then?
One question, do we already have a map of the area that we're going to, and if not, can you provide one?
She says, "Sadly not, because I do not know where in the expanse this is. The people who have gone there say that the forest itself changes almost on a daily basis."
We shall follow the call of destiny.
Out of character, do any of us have any nature skills whatsoever?
In character, we don't need them.
I'm quite adept at peeing on trees.
See, Charlotte,
It's gonna be fun.
I have a chess set.
You can play the trees. They'll probably win. That's okay.
So the inner Chalice holds aloft the branch, and from the branch, a shimmering blue curtain descends, creating an arch, and it glows. And she says, "I will be waiting here and ready for you upon your return." She holds out a small, smooth crystal, which is glowing the same blue as the curtain. And she holds it out to one of you, and she says, okay, so you take it, and she says, if one of you smashes this crystal, you will be instantly transported back here. But I must warn you that when that happens, returning to the Southern Expanse will be difficult through this method.
Do we all need to be holding hands or something?
I jumped through the portal.
As long as you are in the same. And so,
I'm reading the crystal. I'm out.
so she leaps through. So you two leap through. Are the rest of you following?
Yes.
I plod through.
Plod through.
I have to tumble through in a dramatic fashion with a final jiggle.
Okay. All right. As you sort of tumble through. All right. At this point, I will invite the audience's attention and the Twitch channel's attention for just a moment to this map on the screen. And you can actually see that all of you have been carefully placed there, just as if it were planned in advance, one might say. So I want to just describe a little bit about this particular place. You are in a clearing which is surrounded by trees and which are flanked by two large boulders. There is one to the northeast and one to the southwest, and there's an opening that you can see basically to the southeast, leading to another clearing. That's this little pathway going like this, and then another one that goes directly south. The area here is dense and dark. The emerald darkness obviously comes by its nickname, honestly. It is, has heavy tree cover, and so even though it is the middle of the day when you're teleported there, the lighting is still relatively dim. You can see the areas without need of illumination, but unless I specify otherwise, if you are making any visual perception checks, so if I ever say, make a visual, make a perception check and it's based on you trying to see something, you're going to be doing that at disadvantage unless you're using a form of illumination or you have dark vision, something like that. Otherwise, yes, you'll be able to see, but for the folks who do not have dark vision, you'll be at a disadvantage if you do that. There are dead leaves and pine needles which are littering the ground in places. Constant sounds here. There's rustlings in the undergrowth. There's skitterings in the branches, various calls and cries, sometimes close, sometimes far away. The temperature is relatively comfortable, but the air is close and still and uncomfortably humid. Yeah. and as you end up here with the curtain behind you, the curtain you walk through or jump through, and as the last of you passes through, and the curtain vanishes. And you are now left in this clearing with everything else that I just specified in front of you.
I'm going to have my pike at the ready for combat in case we have an unwelcome encounter.
Okay.
Yeah, watch out for those boulders.
There could be things hiding behind boulders. There could be things hiding behind
I checked behind the boulder.
There could
Nope.
be things in camouflage. There could be idiots that get us into trouble by just wandering off.
So you're going to check behind the boulder?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you to do, please, an investigation check for that, since you're actually walking right behind it. Which boulder, by the way? Because you've got one.
Whichever one's closest to me.
Okay. I guess that'll be up to the northeast then.
15.
Yeah, all you see on the boulder is basically moss, and behind it just moss and grass. As you see behind it, you think you see like something skittering off into the leaves, but it may also just have been, you might be a little nervous. There's a lot of wood here, Shala, a lot of wood. So.
I apologize. I saw something I charge after movement.
Here's the interesting thing about the emerald expanse, emerald darkness. Sorry, as you run directly into the forest, you are met by your nemesis, wood. There's a lot of it. So you're just like running, more powerfully, and your powerful arms churning and making this like terrible sounds echo through the forest. You hear birds cry, skittering,
So much for traveling incognito.
Yeah. The echoing
Careful,
sounds.
Shala, the forest has wood.
Come back!
Can't get through it.
Do I still see movement?
What a shame.
You do sense movement, much of your own movement. There is now no other movement.
All right, I'll come back to the
Could we check the other one for,
I saw something.
well, I understand that. Stay alert.
That's how I saw something.
Yes, and that's how you announced our presence to everything within about a 5-mile radius.
It was the glowing green curtain.
My voice is that loud?
That's right.
You guys were worried about my taste. Let's take advantage of this distraction to check out the southwest boulder.
Okay. Go ahead and make an investigation check on this one.
9.
You're like, you've seen
wood.
Lassen, you've been Dun dun dun. Yeah. Lassen, you have encountered boulders before, and you can definitively declare this is a boulder.
While they're inspecting boulders, Cadmus is going to walk the perimeter of this small clearing just to keep an eye on what's around us.
Okay. As you walk around the perimeter, you can see a little bit of stuff is revealed as he attempts to get to the building. There we go. A little bit of stuff is revealed. There is indeed a clearing below you that this opens into, although you can't see very far into it. And then over to the east, you just go far enough to kind of see that there is another clearing over to the east that this kind of extends into. And as you're walking, you also, Cadmus, see and hear the sounds of, like, in the grass. But again, every time you look in that direction, you see nothing. You hear occasionally things slithering overhead, and you look up, but like in the branches overhead, but there's nothing there.
Are there any, like, drag marks on the ground? I hesitate to say footsteps or tracks because I have no skill. I'm looking for somebody, like, dragging the body.
Make an investigation check for me, please.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I take that back. I'm sorry, make a perception check for me.
Ooh, I would probably do that. But am I at disadvantage?
You are, unless you think to ask someone else for help.
Yeah, help.
I'll help.
What you looking for?
I have a +5.
You do.
That's awesome. So why don't you do it?
23.
You see all. There's ones and zeros. Like, you are the one. So on the southeastern side, so over down about right here. Sorry. Right about there, you see not any drag marks, but you do see broken branches on the edges of the trees that are flanking the opening to the southeast. And there is, I should say, right here. And also, one of those trees in particular seems to be the most affected. There's a lot of broken branches off that particular tree.
Fourth tooth. Look at this tree.
That's broken.
Follow Lapson over to that
Yes,
tree.
Okay.
Does this seem like the same kind of tree with the same kind of branches as the one that was found in
It
the?
does indeed.
I think maybe we have a lead on where our branch came from.
I think so.
For orientation purposes on the map, it's north out.
Yeah, that north side.
Let's go that way.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go toward the danger.
How high up are the broken branches?
So we're heading southeast. Is where we're
The
going?
broken branches are about, let us say, mid-height, so about somewhere around here, maybe 3.5, 4 feet
Could
above
be
ground.
a rhinoceros.
Yeah.
This will move into the point position and say, Lapson, tell us where we're going.
No, it could, like, why not?
I really got nothing.
Tell us where we're going, I'm gonna take point, you tell me where we're going.
We're going this way.
Southeast.
Yes.
You got it.
Going anywhere, okay. So as you begin to cross into this area, you notice something very odd about it, and that is that the area features more trees, but there is this little hilly area here, which is actually an area of thick undergrowth, which rises above the rest of the area. And the thick undergrowth, you can see, is covered with these tangled long vines with toothed leaves and dark orange trumpet-shaped flowers.
Florida.
Yes, you have found Florida. No,
Better than Australia.
Do
Hey
the trumpet-shaped flowers have a scent?
Be careful, don't
to
get
do
too
that,
close
you will
to
have to
this.
go up into the undergrowth to see.
And
Or
the
to
nature
smell.
might
Well,
be-
maybe not. Do the
Yeah.
trumpet flowers rise above the undergrowth?
They rise above it, but they are set back. So, like the
How far
undergrowth's
back?
here, a couple feet. So you need
My
to
pipe
actually
has a
go up.
10-foot reach. Maybe we can just slice one off
Okay.
and have a look at it.
Okay. You
You
can do that if
should,
you
you could
wish.
just toss shallow.
You can also do that.
Well, maybe I missed. We'll try again.
And I've seen.
15, there we go. Plus
So
one.
what happens is you take your sword,
Pipe.
your pipe. You take your pipe, and when you sort of cut, the vine curves around it. So it's not that it's trying to grab it from you; it's that it seems extremely tough and it doesn't really.
Sinewy.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's like cutting through.
It's tough ombre.
Yeah.
Does it need like pollen proof out?
No.
So, but if I pull back on this thing, maybe I can pull it out at the root and we can get a closer look at it.
Okay, so if you're going to do that, so you have to start. You can pull it back, and you can see it's like grabbing at it. So you're pulling the vine back. It's stretching, but you're not going to be able to pull it all the way.
Somebody wanna cut it? While I've got it cut?
I'll
Greg,
cut it.
Greg, reach out with mage hand. Okay.
Okay.
Or do that.
So when you reach out with mage hand, actually you are able to pull at it, but you can't pull it off.
Guys,
It's
maybe
not
we-
just not come off.
Maybe we
Doesn't-
shouldn't
doesn't
piss off
release.
the forest.
But you can
It's
like
too
you
late,
can
you
pull
brought
at
it
it,
out.
but you can't pull it off.
Nope, you're on your own.
I don't really do sharp.
Can I use
Garvin?
Yeah.
Can you hand here,
I'm
please?
gonna use my axe and cut it.
Cut the top.
That's a good idea.
Just to free my pipe so we
The
can.
party
move on.
versus the
Yes,
forest. The forest and the grass.
I rolled an 18.
That's 18, all right.
God.
So, you send your axe through the flower flies off and hits you in the hand
Oh,
as
no.
you are cut.
Oh no.
As you cut this thing, your hand immediately is covered with this itchy rash. Like it just is like the worst poison ivy of all time. And when I say the worst, I mean you're like, oh type of, right? It's
Right.
really itchy
Painful.
Right.
and painful.
Hey, I know a remedy for stuff like that. Try peon.
That's really more my specialty anyway.
Remember,
You're a girl.
What's up, Joe?
Peon.
What's up?
Tim, let's go.
It's Garvin.
I'm gonna use spend 5 lay on hands points to cure poison.
Okay. When you do that, the rash indeed, sort of fades away, which is a good thing because you don't know how you would have concentrated on doing anything with that damn stuff. Now what's left of the flower is now lying on the ground.
I think we'll just leave it right there. What do you think?
Yeah.
And I think we'll avoid going up that hill.
I would, however, like both the two of you to need to make perception checks for me. And this is not a disadvantage. This is a yeah. Sorry, these guys.
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
12.
You hear from the undergrowth an odd sound. You hear.
Oh no, guys, I think there's somebody under this underbrush. It sounds
So,
like
I want to
somebody,
get him out.
it sounds like it's somebody crying. It's either a wounded animal or a wounded person or something, and we need to go.
Or a wounded person.
Or a wounded, it could be a minotaur, I don't know.
We don't want to be judgy.
Guys,
You guys don't. You folks don't hear that. It's only.
Well, but they're
only
discussing it.
Okay. Well, now that you're discussing and saying it openly, okay.
Oh yes, no, I'm.
Garvin's telling me that he hears something in the underbrush. Sounds like somebody having a.
Are you sure it's not?
I don't hear it, but Garvin sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know that, but it sounds more.
Garbo, where in the underworld? Can you point at the sound?
Right there.
All right.
Kind of like dead center.
Does Lasson think that he could acrobatically avoid the flowers and go in and investigate?
The DM thinks that that would be an amazing attempt to acrobatically. It's conceivable that you could get into the middle of it with an incredible acrobatics check. Getting out again is going to be an interesting aspect.
All right, let's try
Let's do
something
it.
a little different. Before we
Okay.
go wading into the poison, whatever this is, turn the pipe around so instead of using the blade, using the handle,
Okay.
try to gently prod in toward where Garvin is pointing me where he thinks the sound is coming from.
Okay.
And just see, hello,
Okay. So
we're here to help, hello.
Okay. So you're at the edge, kind of pushing in. So you
Gently,
So you gently push in, and at a certain point it pushes in, and then you hit something or you bump into something,
Hello?
and you hear.
You okay? Hello.
But you did hear that. We all hear that
We
now.
all
You need a hand? You could grab the end of that. We'll pull you out of there. You hanging on? I try to pull back. Any resistance?
No, it just comes out.
All right, pal. We're not. All right, we're going to get this.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
All right, well, we can burn them out.
Let's do it.
Wait. Now, setting fire to poisonous, itchy stuff. That's bad. No, don't do that.
Can we say
So-
shall
That's
I?
not the plan.
Burn it!
Can we say shall I?
3 years I've been.
Of course we can. I'm surprised no one's not there already.
I think I can get in there.
Divine sense? Okay. You do not actually sense the presence of evil or demonic forces around you. Doesn't seem like it.
It should also be or good. It says or good.
Not really. No.
Try speaking to whatever it is, this time not in standard, but in orc, in which I I have fluency. Hello.
I'm sensing that
Hello,
we're
Elor.
doing real good, so that everyone is aware.
Right. And so when you say that, when you speak in orc, don't hurt me!
Oh, ooh,
What did it say?
Don't hurt me.
don't hurt.
Okay.
You open your door.
Just.
So he speaks in
But it responds in standard, not orc.
Really responsive comedy.
Common, right, thank you. Okay, all right, so well, we established something. We have something intelligent, speaks common, and doesn't like orcs. So that's a point that's there.
And it's intelligent, sharp sense
We're
too.
doing good.
You're good. Can I speak in Dwarvish to it? The same thing, like, you
No,
we
we know
help
it
you.
Well, we know it speaks common, but
We're trying to figure out what
So
we're
you're
doing.
trying to.
yes.
Are you gonna do it?
Wait, jump in the middle.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to have a character done.
All right,
Yes.
make it.
So,
No one dies in 5e.
no one dies in body.
This is gonna require a costume change, because Lassen has several costumes he's brought with him, because
Okay.
the show is on the road.
What is this? What is this?
So this is the one he uses for his puppetry. So it's a full-on like black face mask, and he's got his black skin-tight clothes.
I am here for the Cirque du Soleil. Let's see it.
Guy sits back and opens his wineskin. He's gonna watch this show.
We have someone to sing vaguely French Canadian lyrics. That's not Cirque du Soleil. Oh, Mike.
You asked for French Canadian.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
That's well. Listen.
Wait, I'm
Go
not
ahead and
that.
make your roll. It's going to be an acrobatic.
If I wait and take my time, do I get a bonus? I'm very careful and take it.
No, I think
How do you slow gravity to take your
So is it in?
It's a trick.
Lassen's gonna do like some sort of a theatrical thing?
Acrobatic thing to go into the middle of the.
Okay. But his plan is to have his skin all covered, basically.
Okay, got it. Again, not Cirque du Soleil. Not Fred Fair, all right?
I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be so.
All right. Last one, let's have you make that roll.
Not a 20.
Not a 20.
What is it?
Not real great.
It's a face plant, isn't it?
13.
It's not Cirque du Soleil.
So, you don't make quite as you know, stylish, let us say, a leap as you like, but you do land in the center of this, and when you do, you land half on something, some lump on the ground, and you hear, "Wah!" And this thing leaping right above the undergrowth looks to be
Am I
a
not this?
small creature with skin the dark brown of the bark of the surrounding trees. It looks like a tiny little forest gnome, and he leaps way up, "Ah!" and then falls backwards and kind of staggers. And as he falls backwards, you can actually see him, "Ah!" and he holds his leg and collapses to the ground.
Oh, Lassen will kneel down.
Yeah, go ahead and tell him you're here to help him.
I'm gonna like lift up my black mask.
Show the black skin underneath.
My shining teeth, look at friendly.
He's like, "No!" And he's kind of like,
Drown orcs and tigers and bears.
I'm gonna persuade him that I am friendly and nice.
so,
Charisma roll.
okay, go ahead and make a persuasion. Go ahead and, make a persuasion roll / charisma. I really intended to make this intimidate because
17.
so he's like, he seems like he can barely sort of even pay attention because he just seems to be in so much pain with his leg.
Let me see if I can help you with your leg.
I'm sure that healing is something related to wisdom.
I'm sure we can cut it off.
No.
Somebody can.
Let me take a look at that little friend.
Our 20 natural.
Wow. So, due to your extensive history with acrobatic injuries, you know something about the way that legs sometimes can get sprained. And it's clear that what you're dealing with here is probably a sprained knee, if you had to guess. It needs to be either braced or managed with some kind of healing spell of some sort. But you can tell that he's probably in a lot of pain.
Oh, here, little friend, let me see if I can brace your knee with this lovely scarf.
bizarre mix of like Chris Angel and. Alright, so
Maybe you could try, maybe not maybe the poor thing first. I tossed last in my wineskin. Maybe try that.
okay.
Do you like wine, little friend?
Just pour it down his gullet.
Give him the wine skin and then also wrap his knee.
Oh, he's sort of like looking at the wine skin and like looking at your half face, like what, like the last 30 seconds. of
Just
life
drink it,
is on.
shrimp.
So he drinks something, and as you sort of take care of it, he seems like he's, more able to handle these. So, please don't, you don't want to kill me, I'm just telling you, I'm nothing
The
important.
wine isn't that bad, just drink.
And so he has.
You'll feel better.
wine,
Just
it's
drink
like, oh, it's very strong, well.
Have some more.
Thank you. Oh, so he drinks a little more and seems a little more calm, and he says, who are you? He's sort of pointing at you, and then he kind of looks, like, peeks up, and he's sort of like, and all of you.
I'm your local winemonger.
Skeksis, your friend, know me? No, I won't say that. My name is Lassen, and I'm here looking for someone that is missing. So we're just looking for a missing friend, and we're just here to help you. We're not going to hurt you or anything.
Now, when you say missing friend, missing friend! He bursts into tears. He says, I'm missing a friend.
Oh,
My
Who is
friend
it?
is gone.
Good job, Lassen. Keep going.
And
You're not.
Hey, better out than in.
And he
Not true with wine.
He looks up at you, he sort of looks up at you and kind of wipes away a tear, and he says, my name is Frog Barknackle, and I've lived here my whole life, and now I've lost my best friend and my noble steed.
Oh, where did you ride your best friend?
He was my noble steed.
Don't go
This is a PG-13 show. Shut up.
Don't go
Alright.
He's noble, I said.
More wine.
Is your steed perchance a rhinoceros?
For bareback.
A rhinoceros! No, my steed! My steed! And he gets this faraway look. Doomfang! My noble steed, Doomfang! Oh, I've trained him for a long time. He's as fierce as they come. Oh, yes, but I lost him when everything happened. Did you say you were here looking for something? There was terrible things happening here. Terrible.
Tell us what happened, Frog.
Terrible things. Well, you see, I'm an adventurer.
Yeah, I gathered that.
Very good one, too.
He says, he doesn't even. So he says, since I was a young boy, barely out of my babyhood at 10 years, I've been curious. I wanted to explore the expanse, see everything there is here in the forest. And it was only my parents who didn't want me to. They think forest gnomes should stay in one place and make pine cones.
Don't tell us everything.
Well, I'm getting to the good part. So he says,
First of all, there were huge tracts of land.
We only have 3 hours for this thing.
we built a swamp. He says, finally, I left my home. I had an argument with my father, and I said, I will find out on my own. And so I took Doomfang and went forth to see what's out there. But then I heard a commotion in the clearing right over there. And when I went over, there was this man in robes. Oh, he had a long white beard, and he looked very powerful. And yet he was struggling. He was fighting with someone. I couldn't see the other person, but they were fighting with him too. And there were sparks and magic. And, well, I became frightened, and I ran. And Doomfang ran too. And I ran so fast I tripped, and then I hurt my leg. And then I only could pull myself into this undergrowth. And I have no idea what happened to Doomfang. Oh, Doomfang.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of an animal is Doomfang?
What does it matter what he is?
Well, how are we supposed to find it if we can't track it?
He says, if I had him back, oh, wait, track him. I can track anywhere in this forest. No one knows it better than me.
Are you trained in the ranger? Are you trained in the rangerly arts?
Yes.
Well, that's a damn convenient thing. We would be honored to help you find your royal Doomfang.
Wonderful. And he pulls out from his back a bow, which is like, this large, you know, like basically, right? And he pulls out the bow and he's got this, he says, I stand ready to fight evil and defeat them with the power of Doomfang, but we must find him first, or I can do nothing.
All right, so let's get on that.
He says, he cannot cut you far. I always knew the big people couldn't be as bad as they said they were. This is wonderful. By the way, as he's doing this, he's like flailing about.
Dude, I totally sympathize. I lost a chicken once too.
And he looks at you and like, a chicken? He like doesn't even like process. He keeps hitting all of the orange flowers and seems to be doing nothing. Like Tim, he's just like bang, bang, does nothing. He's just banging into it, whatever. And he says, come follow me. And he comes down off of the outgrowth, the undergrowth, the hill there, and comes around the north side of it and then heads off to the east. Hurriedly, if you wish to follow.
Let's fall in behind.
I have to wait for the one who's stuck in the middle of the flower.
Yeah.
He is actually able to essentially clear a path by showing you spots between flowers.
Okay. Can I ask, as we're running after him, why the flowers don't seem to bother him?
He says, oh, nothing in the forest, at least nothing of the living natural world bothers me. I'm from Barknackle. I know my way around. As you'll see, you've got the best adventure there is. Forward to destiny and beyond destiny.
Everybody follow Frog Bone.
All right, we can hand out some more Kit Kats, to be perfectly honest. I'm not gonna throw it, so.
Lead on, Froggy.
Pass it back.
All right, let me just reset for a moment and welcome people who may have come in late. Also welcome people on the Twitch channel. You are watching Beyond the Forbidden Library, the close to the trilogy of Forbidden Library adventures with this amazing crew of players that you see before you and this wonderful studio audience. All right, and of course in the back, the gentleman who did Tales and Tomes of the Forbidden Library, as for Genesis as well, Alligator Alley Entertainment. And that's, by the way, Eric, Chris, Rich, and Brian as well. Like he actually put names. And Aaron is a contributor. Yes, that's right. And Aaron is indeed a contributor. So, all right, let me shift you over.
With this 4-leaf clover.
So, when you get over to this side, basically, of the hill, right here. When you get over to this side of the hill, over here, you can see that there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on over there, except that there is definitely a clearing to the east towards which Frog seems to be heading. But you also, when you get on the other side, you don't need a perception check to hear, coming from the east, this sound.
There's your rhinoceros.
Something
There's your
growling,
asthmatic dog.
something growling and snuffling.
Is that Doomfang?
God, I hope so.
Frog seems to be paying zero attention. He is running
Frog,
directly.
is that Doomfang? That sound.
I don't know. No, it doesn't sound like Doomfang.
A challenge! I charge.
No, don't get in front of Flog Burpsuckle.
I have this image of Shala being horribly offended. Like, everything, how dare you? Okay.
I'm gonna be heartily offended if that's Doomfang.
All right. When you get over to this side, and actually I just realized it would be nice to actually move the players there. So, come with me, players.
Oh, look who.
Lassen's raised by. Lassen's a tree.
Yes. There we go.
There we are. So, bring you folks over here. Okay. When you all arrive over here, you notice that to the east and south there is this very large hill which is completely overgrown that presents passage. But more than that, the thing you immediately notice when you enter the area is a large gray-furred creature with its back turned, snuffling around a rather large hole in the bank of the hill. It looks, from the back at least, like a large gray wolf, and Frog immediately like slams on the brakes, stops, and is like, "Look, Doomfang! Doomfang has to be in." He like does the stage whisper, "Doomfang has to be in that hole," and he says, "Yeah,
I go forward.
even Doomfang can't take on that kind of creature." Okay,
Quick
so
clarity GM question.
Yeah.
What is our range to the gray creature at this time?
I would say just as you enter the clearing, you would probably be about 40 feet from it, 30
All right,
feet.
I'm gonna switch weapon to javelin.
Okay.
And I guess as Shala goes charging forward like a fool.
Excuse me. I go charging forward, challenging like a fool.
Oh, sorry, challenging like a fool. I will basically attempt to throw a javelin ahead to initiate the attack.
Oh God, I'm gonna laugh so hard.
This is gonna be, oh, I would like to know.
I don't know if I'm ready for 20 or one.
More!
All right.
Okay, so I might nick you a little bit.
Right. So as you go forward, actually the result is it sort of just shoots past your head, but it actually does just sort of nick your leg a little bit. Now, what this can do, and this can actually have an effect. If you wish, you could be like, just one flesh wound, and you can continue to sort of, charge forward, or you could be like, kind of turn around, because it was such a miss that it didn't come anywhere close to the Greyford creature, so it's still not aware of your existence.
Oh no, it's aware because I'm screaming, "Turn around, foul
All right.
beast!"
In that case, I would like everyone to roll initiative.
Initiative is a D20, right?
Yes.
Why do you ask these questions?
So you want a low number or a high number?
I think a high, I got
It's
a
high.
natural
High
high.
number, yeah, all right. As usual, I'm
Higher
asking
than
you.
that.
I'm going to roll my D20 taken from the 1984 red box, still with the original white crayon. Okay.
Do we have any?
You just roll a D20.
No, there's something, some people get that.
It'll be, it will, it's the next area.
Oh, well,
I've done even worse than
then it's 1919.
I got 16.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Last one that I'm watching.
I don't have
You got a what?
She got a
We are
5.
moving
I got a
very
6.
5 and 6.
No, I don't think it's that you're moving very slowly.
No, we're
You
staying
made
well
the
back.
decision to
Oh,
stay
yes.
back.
You got this.
this.
You're good.
Well, no. Lassen is like, you got this. Collection is like, oh great.
Oh, here we go.
Bats on the wall?
I bet I'm gonna.
No!
Okay, last one we got.
Last is a 5.
Last is a 5, okay? Shama.
16.
16. Calypso. Sorry?
6.
6? I heard 4. Caddis.
5.
People are really ready for this fight. Corinna.
13.
All right. And Garvin.
19.
Aha, Garvin is
Good.
like,
Throw your
I'm
axes.
always ready. I want to point out Garvin's
Always
going
ready.
before Corinna. I just want to point that out.
Thanks.
No problem.
It's okay.
Thrown axe time.
I've been fun. You have to roll a 1 to hit you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the first creature to go is actually the Greyford creature.
Oh.
And as you run in, turn around, doing all that kind of stuff. The creature,
So sporting of you to give it a heads up.
the creature, and it does look to be a wolf, turns around. However, the first person to move is actually going to be Garvin after it. And Garvin, I want to point out that as you're coming in, I would like you to make a perception check, please, on this thing.
Who, me?
Yes, you. Because you're the next person back.
What's the modifier on that for perception?
Perception is going to be wisdom.
Ew.
She doesn't have any.
10. Hey there. 10.
That's actually enough because it's not that hard to see this particular thing. You notice as the wolf turns around that it has these burning red eyes. And you can see it, like it growls at you, but it does not charge at you, nor does it charge away. It just looks at you with these eyes and almost holds its grip, stares at you.
Hi, Thaddeus.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you're up with last night. So I say,
In class before.
I stop, and I look, and I say, Headmaster?
And it goes, "Rah!" Certainly didn't seem to recognize anything.
But it didn't tap.
No.
Tap twice if you're my headmaster.
Rah!
This conversation's
Okay, I don't think he's our headmaster. But
What
he's
gave
not
it away?
charging.
Was it the
No.
paws, the claws, or the fur?
I still think that.
It's now your turn. It is not. It just turned and did what I said, but it hasn't moved towards you, so you can move.
Right. Yeah. You know what? I'm just gonna walk toward him with my hand down, like you would approach a strange dog.
She's gonna go big with one hand.
So it's
Wait, she doesn't have hands. She can't throw the axe.
and it kind of like growling, like it looks really like angry, growling, fierce. It kind of and snuffles. You can feel its hot breath, just like you know, and kind of.
And then I scritch his ear.
Oh, seriously?
So it kind of. So as you do that, it's like.
Oh, for the love of
Who's a nice guy?
That's my next move.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one. Shala, you see the sight of your companion apparently making friends with a nice, friendly wolf, and
Sacred weapon!
okay.
Then I try to hit it.
Okay. I want to point out, as you're trying to hit it, that your companion may be affected by this hit.
Oh.
High or low?
No, not like that. Not like
High
that.
or low?
No. You can roll a normal attack. Just don't miss it by a lot.
I was going to give her a chance to see if I did the attack.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's up to. Okay. You want him seriously?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, all right. How about it?
Okay. So you stop. It's like. Brr. It's still kind of like as you
Oh yeah. Yeah. So like he gets nervous at that, and I take my other hand and start scratching his other ear.
So it continues to have this weird like. Confused, like it's you know.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah, that's right.
Who's closest?
And so Frog. So say again.
Who is closest to me?
In terms of like, what do you mean, like from
In
part or?
physical location.
You would be. So you are right next to now. You're about 5 feet from the creature and from Garvin, who's right on top of it. The rest of your companions are behind you.
I whisper to
Well,
Garvin, do you want me to stab it?
And I say, I think I got it under control. Sheathe your sword.
And so Frog says, and again the stage whisper.
I'm conflicted.
I put away the javelin, I bought some beef jerky, I'm gonna enjoy this show.
I saw it was like starting to slide in, and then Froggy said that, and I'm like, geez.
When it sees the burnt beef jerky, it's like.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, here we go.
Right away.
So when you do that, it like sort of goes away reluctantly apparently from the
Yeah,
switch here, and it goes over and it starts eating the food, and then it sort of slinks farther away, and then looking for all the world like a cat, turns around, actually like a dog, this part, turns around 3 times, and then curls up, eating its beef jerky. And you hear now, so Frog is sort of looks in there and looks at the hole and looks at all of you, and then sort of.
Come on, Tom, what are you waiting for? Go get your
Stealth,
thing.
And as you get close, Garden, because you were probably closest to the hole, and I would actually say you two shall make perception checks for me, please.
Close. It did. 20.
Wow.
Nice 11.
You do not hear this, but you shall hear the sound of a faint scratching from within the hole.
There's something scratching in the hole.
It's Doomfang! And Frog goes charging into the hole, and there's a confused mix of, whoa! And then this weird snuffling and like something pounding sound on the inside and out of the hole, like something is stamping or something. And then coming out, Frog has this huge smile on his face. We found him! We found him! Now, don't be scared. When you see him, he's incredibly fierce, of course, but he's perfectly well trained and even loyal once he gets to know you.
Open my
And
wine
he sort of
skin
stands to
and
the side and does one of these things, and pulling out is a very large, brown, fluffy bunny. He He has a patch of white on his nose and a rough-looking leather saddle on his back. May I present my war buddy, Doomfang! And Doomfang looks, the aforementioned war bunny looks exceedingly nervous, like he's, like immediately one of these things. And Frog is sort of petting him and says, "This is wonderful! Now we can adventure as we were meant to, Doomfang!" Doomfang is, Doomfang catches sight of the wolf, which is still over there, and is, everything it sees.
Yeah, this is great. I can hardly wait to strike terror into the hearts of our enemies.
That is correct! He leaps onto the saddle, and he says,
I like the way you think.
and he goes over and he sort of says, "Come on, Doomfang, come on!" And Doomfang sort of goes over and then he sort of elbows him a little in the side, and Doomfang Shala leaps up literally, and Frog holds out a hand to you. And you high five, at the moment, and then he drops to the ground and he says, "Right, well, we're ready, where are we going?" And he sort of turns Doomfang, who looks very happy to be anywhere but here,
He does a big of death and away they go.
Yeah, you can track anything with
Yes, you can
And
track
and he says, "Yes, well, I could lead you to the place, the secret place. It's very dangerous, though. Even Doomfang is frightened there." Doomfang immediately,
No, you lie. What would terrify such a creature?
And Doomfang, he said, and Frog said, "Did you hear that, Doomfang?" Doomfang's like,
Practicing your combat maneuvers. I approve.
and Frog just seems delighted, he's just, absolutely. So he says that you can continue to explore, he can try to lead you to wherever this secret place is. Yes. He knows only that it's deadly. He doesn't, remember, that's not where he saw the fight take place. The fight was in that first one.
Does he know where the fight with the human beings?
He showed us.
Yeah, it was in the clearing when you first arrived.
Right, but he doesn't know what happened to the
No, he doesn't.
tall people.
That's right.
But the secret place, do we think that's likely where we would find it?
I mean, you have no way of knowing, but it's a place.
Is there any other place that we have a lead to at all?
Well, I mean, no, at the moment. But
To the secret place.
That's a legitimate question.
What's that saying?
No, we're gonna follow Fog Bark Buckball. We're gonna go to it.
What's his name this time? Let me try and clear.
I just want to make it clear, if we manage to pull this off and rescue the headmaster,
Sure.
nothing that happens in the southern expanse leaves the southern expanse.
But then
I
how
don't
do
like
they
what
sing
you're
tales of our glory?
That's Thomas on.
And
If we say the headmaster, we're all gonna
What are you
graduate
planning on
with
doing in the Southern Expanse that you have to worry about
he
this?
says, and Frog says, as he hears you say that, how are they going to sing our glory? Frog says, "We will do so with my patented battle cry. Doom comes with ears of justice." And Doomfang's ears go up as if this is a cue, and then he sort of darts forward.
I charge forward, echoing the cry.
Okay.
Ears of justice. That's all I can do.
Oh, no, that's great. As long as you said "ears of justice" and it was caught on video, that's all I needed. All right, so he leads you into this place, and the place is unusual in several ways from the rest of the forest. There are, first of all, a circle of stones here. And this place feels older than the rest of the forest, or at least has some kind of sense of age about it, just from the way that the stones even look. There are a set of these stone bricks which are set in a circular wall roughly 60 feet in diameter, and I will show my lovely Twitch chat about this, like this, okay? So, a set of stone bricks set in a circular wall which are roughly 60 feet in diameter, and there is a break to get into it on the eastern side over here. The top of the wall varies in height, basically broken down. It looks like it might have been at some point a tower or some kind of a circular room, which has now fallen somewhat into ruin. This must have been probably the ground floor of that tower countless centuries ago. As sort of Doomfang creeps up, and he gets the ears which were forward and now flat back along his head, and he kind of is, crawling along, and Frog is kind of whispering words, "It's all right, everything's fine, you're a Doomfang."
Fear not, Doomfang!
And Doomfang, every time he says war bunny, like the whisper, even the stage whisper, is like, you know, like as it's going along. And he crawls up basically onto this hill. And all of you, if you wish, could follow him. It's up to you as to what you want to do. But there's definitely, he's leading you to the center of this.
Alright, let's head inside the round thing.
Yeah,
Greg, why
Coliseum
I'm
Jeff.
next to him.
Right. You stride next to him, everyone else is like,
So the wolf stayed back up with her feet.
Yes, the wolf, in fact, stayed back, and as you looked, Lassen, as you were leaving, the wolf was kind of slunk off into, like, away, like into the woods.
I mean, Lassen doesn't know much about nature, but that wolf was definitely not acting normal.
That is definitely
Well,
clear.
let's roll that away, and we'll get back.
That's a good one, unless like normal others.
So, the floor of the tower is made of these flat, rough, and broken gray stones, but it's empty with one exception. In the middle of the floor, standing with a hand up as if shielding himself from attack, is Thaddeus Celeritas, or at least something which looks like him. He is motionless, and indeed does not seem to be breathing or doing anything else. He's frozen in place, as if in stasis, his eyes unblinking and his face still. And when he sneaks into this, Frog is kind of, this is what I mean. Huh? Very, very dangerous. That was the man that I saw. That was the man. Oh,
Yeah, that's the guy we're looking for.
Yes.
Shall we
We
grab
found
him?
him, Doomfang.
Can we break the gem?
Good job, Pump Snuggle.
Let them heal him.
Yeah, you do you.
Okay, can I have the gem?
Oh, wait. What?
You said it was a good plan. Can I have the
I
gem?
didn't say that.
We couldn't move the desk.
I have.
What
I
if
have
he's
a
stuck
passive
in place?
perception
We might
that
teleport
I just
ourselves
kinda,
back and leave.
Not if we're holding on to him.
My
That's
passive
not true.
perception is 13.
Are you
Can I
magic
just sense
specialist?
anything or?
Not based on
No.
perception. There is, you have to get closer to sort of like connect with them, but
Yeah,
passive
once you
perception
actually
doesn't
sort of
reveal
do it.
anything from it.
Okay.
Can you detect?
Maybe we should try moving him to see if he's mobile.
Let's check him for spells first.
Let's root through his pockets for loose change. Oh, I'm saying, if we walk.
What of these lovely options are you actually going to do?
I step in,
Okay,
walk up to him,
okay.
and see if I can move him.
When you walk up to him, when you reach your hand out, you feel something almost pushing back against your hands, like a magnetic force. And the more you like reaching in, the more that it resists. Like you just
Does it feel like the resistance that we felt around the desk?
no. This feels the resistance of the desk was the desk literally was like didn't move. It was like
Okay.
So essentially, this force is keeping Shala from actually physically making contact
Right.
with Thaddeus.
That's
So if it's a magnetic force, I take off all my armor and then go.
And display an understanding of
And in fact-
paramagnetic science that you should not possess. Very good.
Shala, I want to say also in addition to that, you actually can even feel your fingers tingling. The hairs on your arms are almost like standing on end as if it's like static electricity almost.
Okay, I stop.
Okay.
Magic.
Yeah, what's your first move? Yeah.
So if we take a long pointy stick, like a butt end of a pipe,
And do what?
shove it towards him and see if that'll do it? Maybe it's living matter that can't fester.
I think that's unlikely, but you know, we might guess.
Thanks. As I attempt
Yes,
to
yeah.
move this huge pipe.
Okay. So you're not attacking, right? You're just.
All right, so the halfling monk is trying to carry a 10-foot pipe.
So Karina, you're not attacking it, right? You're just sort of like trying to
I'm
poke.
just poking.
That's fine. So when you reach forward, it goes. But you
Defects.
Oh, deflex it.
yeah.
Here,
I'll
have
take
your
that
pipe.
back.
Calexin, can you detect any spellcraft so we know something more about the spell, maybe?
Can you tell us what we?
Look, it's magic.
Well, I am like that.
This is the worst
Or
clue.
illusion, or can we tell what kind of magic it is?
Is it the kind that can be cured by a magic wolf?
Woo!
Spellcraft
Damn, now we have to chase the wolf.
Do you know
I
dispel
only have so much
magic?
beef jerky.
No. Do you?
No, I'm not a magic user.
I know. Believe me, I know.
Why not
Okay.
talking, we're not talking.
Is there anything around the base of this area that
Make an
says,
investigation check. for me,
An
please.
off button? An off button? With the elves, please make me investigate.
Less than will investigate.
There's a-
Okay.
18.
When you search around the tower and sort of the surrounding area, you find 2 sets of boot prints, which are humanoid in size and shape, that are coming into the circle very clearly via the break in the wall. And as you sort of follow those tracks, you can see that they curve around to the north, and they seem to be coming from Area 3, which is a clearing that was directly to the north, and then become sort of unreadable. So they were up there somewhere, and then they came down here. I should point out that you do not see a set of tracks going out. They only go into the circle, not out.
I share this knowledge with the party.
Can't you track?
Hey, Bragg Stack,
Yes!
we got some tracks over here. Maybe you could help us follow them back to the source so we can try to find
Indeed.
the perpetrator of this evil deed.
I will do so, Doomfang, together! And so he nods, and Doomfang kind of like scuffles along the ground. Immediately is like, flat, sniffing. And he's sort of detecting, he's like, tracks, yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us anything about the maker of the track?
Well, first we have to catch up to Hopalong.
He's not moving very fast. He's just sort of like moving along, and he says, well, yes, definitely humanoid of some kind. One of the big people. Let's see, these boots, these are not warriors' boots.
Were they made for walking?
They were made for walking. They might even walk all over you. And so they go, so he looks and he's kind of like, and they were made not for some warrior. These tracks seem somewhat smaller than the tracks of the ones that end with that man there.
Wait a minute. Smaller?
Somewhat smaller, yes.
Like a female?
It could be. What do you think, Doomfang?
Blue-eyed female?
How can you tell that from a footprint?
He's a tracker.
I am the best tracker. The best tracker you'll find in the Emerald Darkness.
Okay, so you're the only one we're going to find in the Emerald Darkness.
He sort of ignores that.
So, can you track where they came from?
He says, unfortunately, they only lead to the clearing to the north, and then I do not know. Also, nothing left this place. They came in, but they did not go out.
Oh my God, it's a roach motel.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to do it with the North Clearing. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah.
It appears so.
Well, you've already been in that clearing that they're pointing out. This is the one that had the
This is the one we-
overgrowth things where you came
All
from.
right, so we started there, so there's nothing there.
We should probably check our listing more. See if there's any
Can we
clues.
check this area for like tracks and stuff to see if there's anywhere that the other track maker could have gone from here?
Sure, you can try to make an investigation check if you wish, also.
Last thing can look for secret doors.
17.
Okay. So the thing, as far as what you said last time, it doesn't seem to be any place. I mean, there's like a trapdoor. The only place where there'd be room for a trapdoor really would be under Celeritas' feet, probably. But it doesn't seem like there's anything like that under there. The rest of it, the walls aren't high enough or anything. You can see the other side of the walls. There's no door that seems to be there that you can find. However, when you start investigating and looking at it, you notice that one of the sets of boot prints that are going in appear normal. But the other set of prints, and actually it's the smaller set that appear normal, but the larger set appear very and confused, as if something was fighting against being brought in. So like the tracks are like, messed up and kind of sort of scraping against each other and things like that.
Do they end at Eddie's?
Yeah.
Would you lift me up? I want to see if this dome of force goes all the way up. Thank you.
Okay.
Feel around.
So yeah, it does. When you sort of reach down even on the top
Yeah.
of his head,
It's solid.
yeah.
Thank you.
What if you toss her?
Are you suggesting we toss?
The dwarf.
A halfling?
I don't think that will accomplish much more than what's already been accomplished.
Which is, her favorite.
Frog says, you notice that, now that they're done with the track, and Doomfang is looking increasingly, if that's possible, nervous. Frog says, this is not a place that we forest folk like to spend time. Some great wizard lived here long ago, I'm told. But even brave adventurers like me know not to fool with ancient magic. Why look, even Doomfang is slightly cowed. And he says, there are other places in the forest with magic of this kind. Very dangerous though, and
How far away is
darker
it?
than
How
this.
many?
Well, there's only one I know of, and others are just legend. I have not
There's
explored,
one?
and I'm learning to do so.
One you know of. How far?
Well, it's not that far. Several.
Let's go!
But
What do you think
It
we
is
might
only-
find there?
it is only, this place is considered ancient. My father told me that sometime long ago, there were ancient powerful magic that was used in this place. In some places, the magic lingers here.
Yeah, I
And
noticed.
the magic pond.
What?
The magic pond. And every time he says pond, Doomfang is like practically digging himself into the ground, like
There's a magic pond?
Yep, that's where we're going,
it is
kids.
an evil place, though.
Does Doomfang dig himself deeper every time everyone else says pond too?
Yes, pretty much all the time. He's got a burrow at this point. He's like,
Lead on!
you just see his ear now.
The ears of destiny.
Now Frog is like level with the ground. Is like, we should probably leave before I dig into the earth.
Yes. The ears of justice lead us to the pond of evil.
And so he says, we'll have to go to several other places of danger on the way.
How many are there?
Well, there are many. It's a dangerous place.
Why can't we avoid them? I'm just curious.
Just as an estimate, we might have to go to, say 7.
So,
Because there's lots of dangerous places. But
so he.
There can be
Well, we all brought the swimsuits because we're going to the pond.
All right.
Let's
So,
do it.
he offers. First of all, he says, perhaps the most direct route is to go south of here. There is a place, they say, where there is much knowledge to be gained. Perhaps it's somewhat less dangerous, but there is knowledge there that is forbidden.
All right, so.
I'll be safe.
That is not the pond.
Oh, for crying out loud. Can we just pick one?
I think we gotta go get the forbidden knowledge.
All right, bum knuckle, we're going to the forbidden knowledge.
Okay. So he sort of gets roughly Doomfang out of the pit, sort of pulls himself out, and goes forward and directly to the south. When you arrive in the south, you see the following. There are more walls here, but these are of a somewhat different nature than the ones that you just left. First of all, you will notice that the trees here are mixed with stones and bricks, and much of the forest floor is covered with similar flat gray stones to the ones that you just left on the floor of the tower above. However, both these and the surrounding walls are much better preserved than those of the tower. And in fact, leaning against the walls are a number of actual bookshelves standing against the walls with apparently still functional books upon them. Now, if these are the same age as the ones you just left, there's no way any kind of things should have survived for the thousands of years or whatever, or at least the hundreds of years that would have passed since this time, and yet here it is. And when you get to it, Frog is delighted. Oh, wondrous! And he leaps from the back of Doomfang and he runs to one of the shelves and he begins pulling books from the bottom shelf and looking at them with delight. He says, oh, it's the greatest crest of all, knowledge! And he sort of looks at it, looking at the books. You see that he's actually got the book the wrong way. And he's just like, wonderful, Doomfang, look! And Doomfang's like,
A scholar for the ages. Would somebody like to rescue him before he closes it on his nose?
Might not want to do that.
I pick them up and bring them back to Doomfang.
oh, and he sort of thinks, Well, I don't understand. It's if you don't like it, are you resistant to knowledge?
It is about time someone appreciated my innate skill.
There is a danger.
Greg, I'll take a look at the books.
Okay.
I'll touch them first.
Okay. So as you look at the books, you can see that there are a number of them which seem to have all sorts of different titles. For example, there is the title of a book which says The Soft Doctrine of Pearls on it. There was another book which has the title The Book of the Balance, which you find up. And then there are a number of other books that talk about the care and feeding of griffins, the dangerous experience of gargoyles, humans, real or legend, things like this, right? In all of these areas. So there's that as well. There's a lot of books, and if you took a little bit of time, Calypso, you could probably find more, stuff there if you wanted to look for something specific.
Okay. But nothing seems to relate to our current situation.
You might have to look more to see, because there's so many of these books to find out. I mean, that's the question. If you're looking for something like that relates to this situation, you can try to do that.
Are there any other tracks on the ground? Any indication anyone else has been here?
Make an investigation check for me. Let's see.
So many books, so little oil.
That would be a no.
Okay.
I'm sure a 4 is a lovely number to have, but not good.
You were like, there are definitely good people here, and then you see it's the tracks of Cadmus is kind of walking around.
I mean, it's not the loneliness number.
Well, for one of these books, the description of the book says that if you open it to a blank page, the parchment begins to fill with the same script, forewarning the reader of an action they will undertake in the future. Adieu. I think we should hand it to when the action comes to play, and it always does, the reader gains advantage if they follow the book's prediction and suffers disadvantage when they don't.
I normally wouldn't know all of this, but we'll let it pass ever since.
Lassen's going to look around and investigate.
Okay. What are you investigating for specifically, though, Lassen?
What's your suggestion?
Look for tracks. I don't find it I'm useless at it.
He's going to look around for other tracks leading to and from this area.
Okay.
8.
Oh, you're also good.
Oh, awesome.
You're like, you know what? And you see, you're like, wait, there are. And then you see again, they're also the same tracks that Cadmus is leading as you're walking along.
What are you doing behind me?
Way to mess up the crime scene.
I'm being stealthy.
You're walking in my blood.
But if you wish, you can, if you wish, make a little bit longer time in search, and then I'll allow you to get a bonus to that investigation if you wanted to look at the book specifically. That's up to you.
Yes, Lassen will look at the books.
Okay.
Lassen likes books. 12.
When you do your, as you're, begin to search, and it takes a little while to do all of this, as Doomfang kind of looks around nervously and snuffles around as he's petted occasionally by Brug. And the rest of you, what are the rest of you doing as Lassen is doing some of this investigation? Besides Cadmus tromping around messing up.
It's a string of
Then I find an appropriate rock to sit on and observe.
I am keeping watch outside our area to make sure we are not caught by surprise.
Gotcha.
Hey, Frost, how long have you known Doomfang?
And just, since he was just a little kid, I raised him, you see, myself. And I knew immediately from the fierce expression with which he looked upon me from the litter that he would be the greatest of all war buddies.
No, that does account for his savage temperament.
And Doomfang is like,
All right, just checking to make sure.
So it takes about, let us say, maybe about 30 minutes or so. And you find 2 books, Lassen, that seem to be of interest in addition to the ones that we've mentioned here. They are volumes 1 and 3 of a book which is titled Thoughts on the Fluid Nature of Time.
No.
And it says that the author's name is a guy named or a person named Carnus Miranda. Now, these are pretty dense academic tomes, but there are some interesting aspects of these books. And if you want to know more, I'm going to allow you to make a history check. And since you've played through the first 2 parts of the Forbidden Library, you will do this at an advantage.
Okay. If Lassen doesn't have history, is that intelligence?
Uh,
Wisdom.
would be wisdom.
You know, that's some
Oh, 20, not natural, 19,
Okay.
20.
As you are reading it, you are reminded, as Frog says as you're doing this, that the most important parts of the book are usually in the introduction anyway. And so you begin to sort of read this, and you see the following, or read the following excerpt. Time, this is in volume 1. Time then cannot be considered a one-way passage. Just as a familiar location, such as one's home, provides both comfort and novelty every time one returns to it, leading one to remark on the way the shadows fall in one's living room at a different time of day, or how the outside sounds of bird and beast change the experience of going to sleep every evening, so too can we, once we discover the means, return to past events, experience them again, or even change them if we so desire. And that is indeed reason for disquiet. For if there is a natural order to the progression of things, who can tell what might result if we chose from despair or anger to disrupt that order? And next to the passage is a sentence handwritten in faded, spindly, angular script, not strong enough. Next to that, written in a different and obviously newer hand, and by newer I mean probably within the last month, he knows more than he says.
Look at this, guys.
Yeah, this is not cool.
Maybe something broke when we did our messing with time.
Maybe, yeah.
That's fine.
I'm not taking the rap.
What could have come from the past back with us?
Or maybe we have to go back into our own pasts to prevent them from being changed, in which case I'm gonna start having a headache.
Ancient evil we must destroy.
What if the ancient evil we must destroy is ourselves?
Oh,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun. Really, you're gonna say that?
I'm going to write that down.
So that was for volume 1. What did I notice in volume 3?
In volume 3, looking again at the introduction to volume 3, you notice something which I lost. Okay. In volume 3, you find towards the end of this introduction the following: same hand as the original writer. Okay. After this many years of research, I am now even more certain of the certainty and danger of my approach, and so I have sought out safeguards. If time can be arrested in its flight, surely it can be started again and allowed again to take its course. I have outlined the methods of doing the former, stopping time, in volume 1, and the latter, starting time, in volume 2. But now I must summarize my conclusions and express my gratitude to those who have made this work possible. The rest of the introduction is a bunch of acknowledgments to his mother, his aunt, and his cat. And scribbled next to the volume 2 reference in the passage, in the newest hand, the one who said the thing about,
He knows more than you.
right, it says, then where in the hells is it?
Yeah. Hey.
Apparently it's only available through this special television.
No, it's a microtransaction if you'd like to proceed further.
Unlock this quest.
Yeah. Hey, Fog Rocker.
Wow.
I love that one.
Is that you casually chewing a Kit Kat?
Are there any more dangerous places with the gift of knowledge?
And he says, oh, none that I know, at least not within this region. This is actually a special place. I had never dared to come here on my own. I was just told of it. But now that we found it, we have all the knowledge we could ever use.
No, we're missing volume 2.
As you say that, Doomfang, and actually, like, as he was listening to Frog, like, his ears were perking up, and you said you're missing volume 2, his ears like,
I don't suppose the bookshelves like Sly or Move or Secret Movies. Did you find any secret movies?
No.
you're welcome to try to make an investigation check on that if you wish.
Yeah, do that.
No, I want you to make this one, Corinna. You cannot forever think, what about this? You do it.
Delegator.
Yeah.
20, natural.
So you walk up to it, and in your practiced monk-like way, you're just like, "Whatcha?" and like, you know. And the book comes out, and there's a moment where you're like, I have it, and you realize you're just holding a book.
Oh,
Nothing seems to move.
That's really cruel.
But it looks really awesome, though. And like, as you do this, Frog is like, my goodness, she is a monk.
As we know.
she is the monkiest of monks.
And he kind of nods solemnly. Even Doomfang.
Well observed, backsmapper.
So, where's volume 2?
Check behind the book, please.
I did.
Let's see, so how many, there's a lot of books here, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And where's book 2? So let's just start knocking them all off the shelf.
Oh, what are you doing?
Nope.
Stop that.
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
so a lot of books are piled up and all around, but you don't see any volumes.
Maybe someone before us
Nope.
came through and searched and couldn't find volume.
Yeah,
Oh, so it's probably not here.
unless it's hidden.
Maybe that's just what they promised.
Not anyway.
Are there any books that might reveal more about the wolf?
I mean, there's definitely lots of books on various aspects of nature, but, you know, is there anything specifically about that wolf? I don't know.
Oddly enough, there's a whole biography about it.
About an hour has passed, by the way.
White Fang, what's this book?
I think we should go to Danger Spot 2.
I think so.
Okay, let's suck it up. Let's do this. To
the
the
lake.
lake, too.
All right,
Come on,
fun.
Fuddrucker.
Okay.
To the pond.
That's like Dangerous Spot 7 or something.
Okay, so,
We're on the road.
so
We're just past-
Frog leads you to the southern portion of the map, southern portion of this area of the forest. And when you get to the southern portion, you notice a few things about this. The first is, all right, there is a lot of, you know, as you can see, a lot of bushes and trees, and there are small little areas of water here as well. Definitely not enough to be a pond or anything like that, more just like, you know, depressions in the earth with some water sort of seeped in the middle of it. But in the center of the area, next to a small region of water, is what appears to be the most interesting part of the area. It is a lone tree, wide and tall, with dark green leaves and bark, and it's holding a book.
Oh.
That is the most interesting part of this area.
Yeah.
It's the holding the book that really.
It's
comes
a tree, and it's holding a book,
I ain't
We
touching it.
really,
just like the pose you're taking right now. Did the book just move?
so basically it's looking at the shredded remains of one of its fallen kin.
No wonder it's so upset.
Yes.
Where's the canoe?
I go around the clearing.
Okay. You go around it?
Yes.
You just like give it a wide berth.
It's knowledge and wood. I'm okay.
It's like the perfect place to stay away from shelter.
The solid just skirts the.
I go into the clearing.
Okay.
So
Woohoo!
Lesson will go as well and investigate perceptively.
Yeah,
So you're going out to investigate the tree holding the book?
yes.
Okay. Are you now?
I
Are you
go
walking,
with them just in case something goes wrong.
as you're walking up, you're kind of like, ha ha! Like, are you doing dramatic? Like, are you being kind of quiet? You know, yes, quiet, not quiet.
I'm sidling up and trying to not make a
I'm not
loud
going.
noise.
Okay. Is everyone else also not trying to make noise?
What do you got?
Garvin, are you going with them in the same way? No?
Sure, yeah.
Quietly, not quietly.
Half quietly.
Perhaps
Half
you guys
quietly.
should wait
Yeah.
here. Perhaps you guys should wait here and hold my jingle hat. And I will use my
Is
Delta
that
plus
a
7 to get
euphemism?
on your plan. What'd you say?
Is that a euphemism?
Good idea. You go ahead. We'll wait here.
All right, fine. We'll wait here, we'll wait here.
Okay. So you're gonna,
So I'm gonna use
stealth
my
in?
Delta plus 7.
Right.
Minus jingle hat.
Minus jingle pass.
Yep.
You should have left the
I'm moving very quietly.
All right. So you move in, and at first it's like very just like ninja style, right? And then you get up there, and it's like, look at that, ching, like it rings, and the tree, which is like this, looks over at you and says, yes, indeed, yes, most curious, the most curious thing I've seen in many a decade, yes.
We're not really that
yes.
In fact, we really just don't even want to know.
The voice of this creature is booming so much that you can feel it rumbling through your feet, right? And it's sort of this, kind of rumble. You notice also something odd, Lassen, which is that it moves and nothing else moves with it. Like it doesn't have to move to, it's just, type of thing. And this continues to stay out in front of it.
Hey, we're reading good books lately?
And there's sort of silence and says, there's more than one I see of you in the forest.
Oh, shit.
It says, I am courage, and then this line of incomprehensible consonants, some weird thing, and it takes like a good 30 seconds to get through it, and then says, for you younger folk, just still water will do.
Can we see the books for water?
What are you doing in my forest? When do you plan to leave?
As soon as we can get our professor back.
We have a friend who has been instilled, and we wish to unstill him and leave.
And by the way, you notice that Frog, for the first time, is just didn't say anything. Like for the first time, looks as stunned as Doomfang. Just like Doomfang, Frog, they're just very stunned, looking up at them, and sort of like looks up and just struck dumb with awe or something. So Stillwater says, do I understand that some mischief has been done within my forest?
Yes.
I see you speak my language.
If we have progressed to talking wood, I am so away from that.
I have this image of you as like Homer Simpson in the bush, like.
So nothing.
Mischief would imply that somebody got pants. This is more like a kidnapping, is what we're in.
A kidnapping.
Is
An abduction.
somebody frozen in time?
Time. And there's sort of a moment where it looks and then, I have been reading a book on the nature of time.
Yes.
And yet I have lived longer than the writer of this book and many before.
That wouldn't happen to be volume 2, would it? Because I heard it's really good.
And
But
so,
even better.
Stillwater looks back down. And I feel like one of these things like, yeah.
Kelly, you have an axe, right?
For the first time, like Frog is like, what? And Frog says, you can't attack.
Just ignore him, everyone else does.
It's okay.
Protector.
It's okay.
You can't attack the
Yeah, we know,
protector.
we know.
Attacking her is like attacking the forest.
It's okay.
We know.
It's very agitated.
We know.
That's a
it's
her.
fine.
That is a her.
Yeah,
All right, good to know.
The
Shaw's
protector.
married, it's okay, don't worry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really hard to speak this language. May I read
Once
the
we're out.
introduction?
And so thinks about it and says, yes, well, I am intrigued by this topic. I've read almost 5 pages so far, and it has been a long time since I've been disinterested to read so quickly.
Well, that's 5 pages more than Charles ever read.
There is someone else who kept asking me for this book, though. Some odd little human wandering through my forest. She is looking for several things, including this book. I had been planning on giving it back to the library as soon as I was finished, but perhaps I have delayed too long in doing so, yes.
Over 2 books is a very, very severe.
Fines are enormous.
Fortunately, we're authorized to waive those fines if we could just take that book back now.
Still, Walter. Lesson will describe Yenner Shellis, the assistant head, the new assistant head, and ask if that was the human that was asking for the
Hopefully not that silly because I'm like a year old.
Right, several days back. So, humans often look somewhat similar to me, but that does not sound like who I saw.
Just open the book to the first page, please. I want to read the introduction.
But why must we be so hasty? There is much time to read and learn all there is.
No, humans have short lives.
Indeed they do. Why must we shorten ours by indulging them?
Your life won't be any shorter if you indulge us. If you choose not to indulge us, that could change.
I started backing away.
And Frog is like, and Stillwater is like, I do not believe that you would truly threaten me,
No.
for I would probably destroy you. I do not wish to destroy you. Seem friendly enough.
Just frustrated.
We are friendly, Stillwater. Would you come and look at our frozen and sorcelled friend?
Can you get there in less than 2 months?
If I start now.
No.
Okay, stop.
We don't have a lot of time.
So Frog sort of goes over to, I think probably Lassen, says,
If you tell the protector how important this is, she always helps us. Just tell her that we needed to save the forest. I'll help, and so will Doofay.
Bond.
Anyway, Doofay's in the
All right.
board.
Go for it, Lesson. So Lesson will use persuasion.
Okay.
So I'm persuading Stillwater that whoever could have cast this spell, Freeze our master, could also represent a danger to the forest of
The Emerald,
The Emerald
Darkness.
the Emerald Darkness. May also be in danger, unless it says as slowly as he can manage to hold himself.
Before you make your roll, as you say this, Frog sort of tremblings. The protector, and so what? And so Frog says, these people they helped me and they helped Doomfang, and you can see Stillwater, looking over at Doomfang at this point is just like,
Having a stroke.
And Frog says, we cannot wait, protector. The people are in danger now. You must also protect them, not just in the future, but now. Stillwater. Okay, now make your roll. Do it at +3.
Do it, bro. Do it.
No pressure.
21.
So, Stillwater sort of waits and looks at you and says, "Perhaps there is learning yet to be done, even for the very old."
Yes.
Yay!
Holds you the book. Now,
Hold you back.
hands you the book and says, "I will also caution you. There is a creature here of evil, not the one looking for this book. She lives in the pond there." And sort of points off to the east. And she says, "It is a dangerous creature and it is deceptive. Use caution with her." And then now you have the book that you can look at if you wish.
Ooh, Lesson looks at it.
What's it say?
Okay. So, like the previous volumes, Volume 2 of Thoughts on the Fluid Nature of Time is a dense academic tome. It discusses various aspects. But in the introduction, as usual, the following summary is written. As I have indicated in Volume 1 of this work, and will develop further in Volume 3, the halting of time in its course is not an impossible task, but it can also be begun again, giving the right components as listed below. 3 leaves of the cycan, 2 branches of, and then there's a whole list of components, basically. It concludes with the 3 most intriguing sentences. Little beyond the items I have listed here will successfully reverse the process by which time is frozen in place. But there is another answer, one which is held within the flow of life itself. I must trust that those who would know more will have the wits and the will to find what they seek within the flow of life.
That sounds like blood.
Or urine.
Stillwater says,
Maybe not.
So maybe we should just go back and bleed on it?
Well, I think we're going to be bleeding by the end of this anyway. So why don't we save that until last?
So volume 1 said not strong enough. He knows more than he says. Volume 2 is talking about reversing frozen time and finding the last component in the flow of life itself. And then volume 3, the handwritten notes, talks about where in the hells is it?
Right, because she or him could not find volume 2. But we did. Now we have the lovely words flow of life. Reverse, which is blood.
Or it could refer to a moving body of water.
We give the volume back to Stillwater to safeguard it from anyone else who might want this information.
"Thank you. I am looking forward to reading more.
Yeah, page 6.
I cannot wait."
Enthusiasm is infectious.
Does the flow of life itself mean anything to you, Stillwater?
There is much within the forest which shows the flow of life. Streams and rivers and ponds and puddles of water all reflect what gives us life here.
Oh, that was 30 minutes of my life. I'm never going to get back.
Yeah, like we are.
Yeah, well, so on to the next dangerous area, Funbrucker.
Yeah, what she said, butt snunker, let's go.
Froggy's like,
What? Did we tell Stillwater about the wolf? I tell Stillwater about the wolf and ask if it knows why it didn't attack us.
Because he just likes
The
ear
wolf.
scritches.
there are no wolves I know within my forest.
Uh-oh.
No, this is what we saw.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, did he have red
I
eyes?
am Red eyes.
And like ear scritches.
Did it attack you?
No, it was a good boy.
It was a boy.
Oh, or a girl. Well, you know what I'm saying. She's
There's
right.
kind of a pause where Stillwater's like, and
Good
then,
puppy.
I am troubled, and I will investigate.
Oh.
So we'll look forward to your report in a year's time.
In years time, we want to let the.
Begins to leave the clearing
Okay.
eventually.
On to the next spot.
Where are you, well, where goes it? So where do you want Frank to try to lead you?
It's fun time.
East of here.
I think it's pond time, yeah.
We're
Yeah,
heading
fun
east.
time.
Pond time?
Come on,
All right.
motherfucker.
Motherfucker.
Adding syllables at this point. All right. So,
We're sorry we keep mangling your name. Your tongue is difficult to use in this tale.
it is all right. I understand the big people's limitations.
I don't.
Okay. When you enter this area, which is
That's a pretty big pond.
here,
Oh.
this area is dominated by a large pond, which is taking up most of the space, although there is a narrow southern and western bank. A fast-flowing stream is filtering into the pond from the north. And the pond is, as you can see, there's a little bit of a sound of the trickling water coming from the north. It's muted, but you can definitely hear it. As you look at it, the water seems fresh and clean. It does not seem brackish at all. And this is, what you see, just that.
Hey, Candace. You see that white skin?
Last I saw, we gave it to a smug rocker over here. I think he emptied it.
Brian, you still
I hear that.
All right, there you go. Okay. Throw it up in some of the water.
Okay. When you come up to the area, you walk up and suddenly surfacing above the pond is this beautiful woman who has sort of light bluish skin and silver hair. And she floats above the pond, looks to be a young woman of less than 20 years old, perhaps perfectly proportioned features. And she looks at you with a smile. She says, "Adventurers, you have come to a place of peace and comfort in this darkness. I welcome all of you." Yes, Sean.
What was that?
Detect
Oh.
divine sense.
Where's the goat?
Okay. Shala, if you step up to do the divine sense, I want you to make a perception check first, please.
I'm just ignoring her and getting water.
Okay.
9.
Okay. You absolutely sense evil.
Oh.
War the party, be subtle, charge it. Warn the party.
Are you kidding?
Alright, I draw my sword.
She says, "There is no need for violence. The forest is hot and humid, and I can feel your will."
She's evil!
Will you not cool your bodies and your minds here?
No.
Perception check. Do I smell bullshit? No, I don't. So I got
Perfectly
wait.
rational. Yeah.
I call forth sacred weapon to make my light
Okay. It's called forth. Yes.
Oh, I did a perception check as well, and I rolled a natural 20.
You notice that while hair blue, skin blue, but her eyes are bright green.
That must be.
My God tells me she's evil. I charge forward.
Into
Okay.
the water?
Yes.
I'm not smart.
Wait.
Stillwater warned us about this, and the paladin is charging. So, okay, time to draw a javelin and go to work.
Okay. As you sort of charge forward, you see the green of her eyes. You see the green of her eyes grow bright, and her pleasant expression flickers. And she says, "You must not attack this place, adventurer. You know not what you do."
That's logic. I don't listen.
Okay, so now she's in the middle of the pond.
Oh, I thought she was at the edge.
No, but she's 10 feet in, so she's not like 40 feet away. She's 10 feet away. So the question is, are you gonna do like the Troy, you know, like rah type of thing, like, or
Javelin.
Oh, no, we're gonna be much more.
so you're gonna throw, but I want to know what Charles doing.
I'm grabbing the javelin and throwing it.
Wait a minute. One person, like from the air, like you grab it from the
Grab my
He's
javelin.
intercepted. Okay, you're throwing your javelin. I really wanted you to grab his javelin and throw it.
Here, give me that.
No, I will. In that case, if you grab that javelin, I want us all to roll initiative. Let's get to it.
Greg,
Yes.
did you manage to get the water?
You did manage to get the water, yes. And it is now filled. Seems crystalline and clear. I do want to make, as you're drawing that, actually, go ahead and roll initiative, but Clifton, as you're getting that, I want you to make a perception check for me, please. It's a different one.
That would be
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so you just grab the water and it seems, you know, like it just fills the water, so it seems to be okay. Yes,
That's
is that
my
4?
I have the water. What's
Minus 1 would be 14.
But you do have the water. Okay,
14 for Kevin.
Garbo, what you have?
Garvin's 14.
14. Corinna?
19.
Okay.
You
Clifton?
go first.
15.
How old am I?
Everyone is ready for this one, or a lot of people are.
14.
Okay. Except for Charlotte, who is maybe confused by the whole javelin incident. Last
15.
15. Oh, wow. Okay, we need to do a little bit of some tie breaking here. Lassen and Clixon, what are your dexterity scores, please?
16 plus 3.
Clixon?
13.
Okay, so Lassen will go first. And then Cadmus and Garvin, what are your dexterity scores?
Mine's an 8 minus 1.
That is a 9.
By the slightest of margins, Cadmus gets it. Okay.
I may not be able to do much, but I can detect evil.
This is
We should print that on a bumper sticker. Slap it on the back of your armor.
Slap it on the front of my armor.
Do it on your head.
Warn the evil.
Can't we just run away?
Okay.
What fun is that?
I mean, you all can.
Yes.
Or you can do what Cadmus usually does.
Looking up the prophecy.
Sit on the shoreline, eat some popcorn while you watch me run out of javelins and start throwing rocks.
So,
Hey, I'm throwing javelins right there with you.
Like I said,
You
what
have javelins?
you
I-
usually do.
But I usually do.
okay. All right. First to act is Corinne.
Yeah, lucky. So these big guys have got javelins. You've got the water.
And you
Your
didn't.
darts.
And darts.
Callista, you didn't perceive anything about the water, right?
Nope.
No, okay.
And you have throwing knives.
I do, 2 of them.
Which you don't want to be in front of.
I mean, okay, that happened twice. What are the odds that will happen?
It's only happened every session.
Okay.
That won't help you.
And another step backward.
Good use of initiative. I retreat.
You said she's 10 feet from the shore?
Yes.
So if I'm 10 feet behind Garvin, am I still within range of my dart?
The dart
Range of 20 to 60 feet.
20 to 60.
I think it's pushing it because Garvin's not right on top.
So
of
maybe
the
I don't get my
pond.
+5?
No, it means you'd be doing it. The long range of that is 60.
Yeah. So,
I don't think you're gonna be
so
able
just
to do that.
hypothetically, if I were to like step back behind Garvin and hypothetically roll a 1, is it possible I could critical with my dart?
When you say critical, do you mean Garvin?
Oh, it's happening compact.
You know, things do happen. Sometimes lemons, you know,
You know
make
what?
lemonade.
I'm gonna back up and I'm gonna be ready with my dart in case that water elemental comes towards us.
Okay, so if the creature comes towards you, then you're going to throw the dart out.
I'm gonna throw the dart.
Got it. Lassen, you are up next. Would you like to do Felixon is on deck?
So my companions, are they still having difficulty seeing very far?
Mhm.
So, can I do dancing lights I can't remember, does fairy fire outline something? Well,
Fairy fire outlines the target.
I'll use
And
fairy-
also allows you to get advantage on attacks against the target if it succeeds.
Yeah,
We
how do
actually-
that? Save DC 13.
Okay. Does it say, is it dexterity save, or does it say what save?
No, it just says save DC 13. My dex is 16, so it must be intelligence.
It's probably intelligence. That's what it does. No.
That's not my race.
So you do this. So you do this thing. You cast towards it, and almost in this supernaturally, like sort of sweeps out of the way and passes, and then. Yep. Again, and the expression just flickers again. Okay. So unfortunately, not work. Are you staying where you are, Lassen, or are you trying to move closer or away from the bar?
He will move basically into a position where he's not in direct line of fire. So
From Garden. No, I'm just kidding.
he'll move himself and away.
Okay, yeah, I should move you.
Tactically move himself away so that
Bring you all down
he's
there.
not in direct line of fire.
Yep. We'll move you all down there. Like, down to the pond.
Come with me.
Come with me to the pond. All right. I'm actually going to put Carvin in the pond. All right. So we're going to move Lassen out to the side. Okay. Lovely.
Where's butt plug?
Next up is going to be Gleason with Cadmus on deck.
I just can't take a couple steps back. Guys, I have the water. Let's go.
But evil.
Yeah.
And logic.
Yeah.
So you're choosing to do nothing.
I backed up several steps.
Nicely done.
Cadmus, it appears the time has come for someone to move forward.
17 with a javelin.
17 of the javelin will hit.
Javelin damage is 1d6 plus 3. 5.
Okay. All right. So when you strike this thing, it hits, and then, and again, the expression, the eyes are just like, like really, crazy green now. And are you staying where you are on the shore, or are you moving back or forward?
I will trek sideways to foul up its target.
Okay. That is going to lead us to Garden.
Yeah, I'm gonna take an axe and throw it.
Okay.
At the water creature.
Yeah, exactly.
Critical specification. Well done.
14.
Okay. That's not good. All right.
So my dexterity is 1, so wait, sorry, what? 13.
Okay, so 13. As you throw it towards the creature, it again dodges out of the way.
And it
extremely
splashes
fast.
into the water.
And it does splash into the water, that is right.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's son of a bitch.
Let's see. It's going to say Corinna cheers.
One down, one to go.
Oh no!
Our weapons sink. Run away!
That's the one that never hit you. Now she only has the one that's drawn in her body.
Twice. Thanks for that image. Much appreciated.
Okay. So, Shala is up, and just before you go, you hear from behind you, destiny comes with ears of justice! And with Doomfang, and Doomfang goes bolting towards the water and then straight off to the left. And it's just like this, right? And the front is like, back that way, Doomfang! And this way, and runs around basically frantically. So Doomfang is just doing a big circle around the water with Frog shouting words of encouragement, you can do it! That type of thing. Apparently that was his action, which it was. And now, Shala, you may proceed after the inspiration of the war buddy.
Yes!
Ears of justice!
not, and sorry, with the javelin, right?
With the javelin.
This is not going to do it. You throw it, and again, she says, I had hoped to resolve this peacefully, creatures, but now, and so you see the face of this creature hideously split, and what is left is this leering, green-faced creature with long white hair that flows down, and she holds her hands, this green energy sort of arises in it, and throws it towards you, Shala. Throws it towards you.
I put my shield up.
Good as walk away, but no.
Okay. So that is going to be a 16.
It hits the shield and bounces off. 18.
So you managed, yes, you literally got a Captain America, it, like, shing, right?
I throw the shield.
It's work to put her soldiers.
Divine inspiration.
So you don't throw it, but you do manage to, and she's, I will do nothing, creature. That brings us back up to the top of the round as she floats above with these two green glowing orbs in her hands. Back to the top with Corinna first.
Yeah, places to go, people to see. Let's go.
I'm leaving. Okay.
Corinna retreats.
Okay. Are you retreating in like just straight west? Like, are you retreating in a particular direction? Heading this way, directly into the pond. Like,
That's not a retreat.
That's a suicide
Which is the way we came.
you came
from the west.
Right, you came from here.
Well, then let's go north. Sort of.
Like just
Come
due
on,
north
never
of the
see
pond?
that.
Yeah, let's go north.
Okay. So you're going to retreat to the north. All right. Corinna starts heading in that direction. Last.
So, she just dodged my spell before, right?
Yes.
I think he's gonna try and cast that again.
Let's leave!
We'll do it once per day. Never mind.
Yo, interpretive dance over here.
So is everyone else in full flight or just the monk?
So far, all the
Just the monk.
busy throwing javelins at it. It has a
I'll join the drama club.
Oh!
Come on!
I'd like to think that you're stuck in this moment while Doomfang runs around.
She offered to join the drama club.
Oh, Lassen is verklempt and needs to refocus.
Okay. So Lassen freezes, hesitating, unsure.
Yeah, hold action.
You two
Um,
are gonna leave it very
while holding the
Nails in the
action,
wall.
while holding the
My
action,
job is-
yeah, I need a specific trigger though, Lassen. What are you going to do under what circumstances?
Sorry, say again.
What are you going to do under what circumstances? You can hold your action, but do what when what
Lassen
happens?
holds action until 50% of the party is fleeing, and then we'll flee with the 50% of the party.
Does the 50% include the war buddy?
The war bunny has to be saved. Oh.
I'll let you ponder on that. Felix, you're up, and Cadmus is on deck.
I'm actually gonna hold until these two go to see if they're actually gonna attack again.
I like how everyone's going to wait and see if everyone else is running.
Two of them staying attacked.
Here comes another
Oh, I'm
javelin.
sorry.
Because this creature's already attacked once, if these two actually do wind up staying to attack, I will join.
Okay.
I will say, out of character, you all should know that my duty is to protect the party, which means if everybody leaves, I will leave, no matter what the situation is.
Right. Okay, Cadmus.
They're killing me. They're just killing me.
Yeah.
Javelin. That's 24.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whopping 4 points of damage.
Is it dead?
Yes, you. No, it's not dead. Very far.
But it's got two javelins in it.
Yes. It takes it and seems like actually pulls the javelin out and holds the javelin and concentrates, and green energy flows from the hand up the javelin until it is burning with green fire. And then
That's
flares
not
at you
good.
with the fire reflecting in your eyes. Kevin, so you're gonna move anywhere, or are you staying where you are?
Track back in the opposite direction. Basically, paralleling the wall.
Right, because you were like
I was
basically.
moving to the left, now I'm going to parallel to the right.
Gotcha. Okay, that's gonna lead us to Garvin.
Yeah, I'm running.
Okay, so you're gonna turn around, you're running the same direction the current one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, joy.
That's gonna lead us to Shell. So right now you've got two people running, you've got Cadmus who are still there, Felixin and Lassen are still waiting to act. And Doomfang is running.
But as
around.
far as I can see, they're still there.
Yes.
Well, we're holding back.
They're holding back, Cadmus is not holding back.
They've frozen.
Then I attack.
Alright,
I just landed. That's all I did. Doing anything.
That is a 20, not natural.
That
Sorry,
is so.
22.
that definitely hits.
Okay. 9 points of damage.
There we go.
Is it
Now,
dead?
now we're making progress.
It is not dead. But you definitely, it's taken notice, and she kind of hisses at you. And now, as I said, this thing is in green fire, so she turns the javelin around, and then chucks it towards you with this green flame
Is
running
she
along
shooting
the
at
side
me
of
or
it.
him?
She's throwing it at you.
Did you landed the last attack?
No, that's fine.
I love where,
I have an ability to protect you if she throws at you.
I also have the ability to protect you.
That's going to be a 24.
That's
Ow.
it.
So that strikes you. You try to get your shield up again, but it actually just sort of, it's so powerful as the throw that the shield actually, bangs back into you. And the green flame runs along your body, so you are now burning with green flame. And she cackles to the skies.
Wait a minute, is that like the?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Is that like the flame that swept the room? Remember the description of the?
This is not a good time to do a forensic investigation. The cabin is on fire. Put it out with oil.
Why? It would have been grease. We're going to
No, I'm fine. There's a lake. I'll just jump in.
what could go wrong? Okay, Corinna, you are still running. Now you've heard the sort of shout and the scream. Are you just continuing to book it? Or are you ever looking over your shoulder? Or
I'm kind of watching to see what these guys are doing, kind of doing the backwards dance, and I'm like, oh, come on, you stupid.
Hit point damage. Is there any?
Yeah, there was 15 points of damage. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. It's kind of important. I was too busy putting you on fire.
But I will, no, I'm probably out of dark range. I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
Come on, guys, let's go.
All right. Corinna's going to keep booking it that way. Lassen.
Okay, Lassen is gonna maneuver so that he has advantage and use sneak attack with a thrown dagger.
Okay, I'll buy that. The creature seems very occupied with Shaw at the moment.
We're all gonna die.
Everybody's on dice. Don't have any man.
But I'll die first.
20 to hit.
20 to hit, that'll hit.
Yes.
Yep. Now we get the rogue sneak attack damage. 700 damage.
Yeah, number of D6 it actually has number.
Sure.
Woo! 16 damage.
All right. So you can start to see that there are definitely scratches and scrapes within this creature. Still does not look, like it's breathing heavy, but you definitely made an impression. There are some definite wounds on this creature. And hisses at you.
Yes. You're not alone here, Drow.
Hey!
And
No.
he sort of points at you and says that. And then that brings us in. You're staying in the same place though, Lassen?
He'll do a 5-foot adjust. Actually, he probably used all of his move to get into the right location.
I would assume, but you could maybe shift back a little bit if you want.
He'll do a 5-foot defensive adjust if there's a nearby shrub.
I'll buy that. Calixon and Chemnitz on.
Magic listen.
Okay.
Nice.
So Right. So we're going to need 3d4 from you, sir.
2, 3, so 5, 6, 7.
Okay. So all of these, actually, I'm sorry, it's, each one is 1d4 plus 1, sorry. So,
11.
so 11? Okay, so, these, yep, and sort of falls backwards, and hisses and growls at you. Definitely more damage being inflicted now, for sure. You can see on this thing. Are you staying where you were, Gibson, or not?
I'll sort of shift to the side a little bit.
Kind of like, as you do this, you notice, like, you kind of go, I was gonna say, you look to the right, Doomfang, like,
Side of your eye.
Frog still shouting, yeah.
Frog, is there a bow?
Way to go, War Bunny, don't drive angry.
Yeah, Fred has a bow.
Frog is like, that's an excellent idea! All right, we'll see whether Frog can react. Cadmus is up next.
What is the range to the creature over the water? How far from shore is it?
About 10 feet.
About 10 feet.
Yep. Very little, 10 to 15.
How deep does the water look?
That's hard to say without looking here.
I mean, within like the first 5 feet of shore, can we see the bottom?
You cannot see the bottom, but it's also because it's dark here, and remember, so it'd be hard to see. It's fresh water, but not necessarily clear water.
Yeah, I don't want to step in and be
Hard to say.
back in the water.
It may be like a couple feet, or maybe...
It may be 2 feet, it could be 8
Yeah,
feet.
good,
Yeah, I don't feel like finding that out the hard way.
Let's go for another javelin.
Okay. How many of these do you have, by the way?
I had 5, 2 have been thrown. We're on number 3.
Okay, because as it's been clear, you're not getting them back.
Unless we kill the thing,
Well,
which means I can certainly go in and get it.
We shall see.
Maybe.
If the water's not poisoned.
Well, that
I'll
one-
find out.
Well, through one you knew that was burning.
Yep.
And if you fall, I can always pluck that out of your corpse.
Yep.
So,
There's always...
So that one came back.
That's a silver line, right?
One has already come back. I'm reloading. 22.
That will hit.
Do you want
Absolutely.
to throw anyone at her?
in a moment.
Okay.
9 points of damage.
Okay. So, yeah, she's starting to look pretty...
About that one.
Yeah. Hang on, and is now growling at you.
Okay, sure.
That's going to lead us to a Garvin. I assume you're saying the same. Are you continuing to do the...
Now I track back left. I'm basically parallel and short.
Garvin.
I'm gonna run back and check on Shala.
Okay.
What?
Shala the burning man.
Shala is on fire.
Looking hot, baby.
Do I have like a cape or something that I could throw on her to try and get it put out?
Is that what it takes to get healing?
Let's find out.
I haven't healed her yet. I'm trying to stop her from burning.
I imagine you could try to do that.
Apparently it takes more than
Yeah, then I will try to do that. I throw my adventurer's cape on top of her and try to stifle these magical green flames, because that's totally gonna work.
Okay. I need you to make a dexterity save for me, please.
Ow, don't hit the lance.
Oh, the cleric's on fire!
9.
Okay. So when you throw it on top, immediately it goes up in green flame.
Woo!
So do you.
So that's what
And again from the pond. Cackles.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also going to do 5 points of damage.
Oh, this is awkward.
Where this cleric's on fire. All right. That's gonna. Terrible joking. Really good. That's gonna lead us to Shala.
So I'm gonna lay on hands on myself.
Okay.
Does that put out the flames?
No. Now it will heal you for a certain portion of your damage, but it does not put out the flames.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm gonna lay hands on myself.
Okay. And I think you're out of it now, right? Or are you? Because you used some before to
Yeah,
heal.
I have 15 points that I can do total. I've
Okay.
already used 5.
Okay, got it.
And I can spend them however.
Yeah,
I
no, of
want.
course. Mhm.
So I'm gonna lay hands on myself, and then I'm gonna walk into the water. Does that put out the flames?
When you walk into the water, the following happens.
Uh-oh.
So the creature like reaches up like this, and then this blue spout of water shoots up, and In front of her, and between you and the green hag-like creature, is the same creature you thought you saw before, the beautiful nymph-like creature floating, except this one does not have green eyes. And she sits in front and sort of looks at you and smiles, and then turns to the creature behind her and says, "You will not do what you wish to do to them, Celeritas. This is my pond." Her voice sounds hoarse, like she's weak, but she, is basically talking to her in this aforementioned Celeritas. "This is mine!" And she, they're sort of facing each other, and sort of turns around again, and the creature essentially falls forward, and when she hits you, the water splashes, and the flames are put out.
Nice.
And Celeritas hisses and punches at the water, and just this big, splash that comes up.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How many feet from the shoreline is Shala?
About 5.
And how deep is she in the water?
Only about, it seemed like it sloped down, only a foot or 2.
Thank you.
So, standard action, movement action, free action.
Okay.
For my free action,
I'm going to yell, "Thank you."
No, I'm going to taunt Celeritas and
Okay.
say, "I thought you wanted to be effective."
And Celeritas is like, and looks very angry.
Bunny finishes another one. The War Bunny 500 is still going on.
The war bunny is like half break.
I was going to say, you hear, "Well done!" It's like,
Play to your strengths.
Okay. So you can also see, by the way, as you notice that it looks like Frog is trying to get the bow, but it's like, like as running along with Doomfang. All right, that's going to bring us back up to Corinna.
Corinna,
Going to panic.
so I'd just like a
Put
little
the
summary.
flames out on the
Okay,
clear
okay,
with your fists.
I'm just gonna throw this out here.
You're not
That
on
now
fire
would be-
anymore.
The dwarf is on fire.
I know the dwarf's on fire. You're not on fire.
I'm not on fire.
So she just needs a good push into the water?
Yes.
Yeah, that works well.
Okay. Are you going to permit this push?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
And
Corinna.
if I do my flurry of blows and stun her?
Are you attacking her to put her in the water, Corinna, who talked about the price of vengeance earlier today, or not?
You could use your wonderful monkish dexterity to push her without lighting yourself on fire.
Fine. Says the waffle good.
Okay, so
I assist my fellow companion and adventurer into the water with a good, healthy push.
Can I react to this push?
I don't think you see it coming. In fact, I'm pretty confident you don't, because you're like,
Once it happens,
you're not going to do like a wonderful
When you grab her and you kind of
I'm so tempted to allow it, but I don't really think
So running up to her unprotected back, I yell, "Kevin, I'm coming to help you!" See what this does.
Okay.
Woohoo!
So,
I got a 16 on the die.
okay. So I'm going to assume, what's your dex bonus?
3.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that that works, that you were able to essentially just lower your shoulder and, ram into her back. I need you, though, to make,
Whatever else was said.
but I need you to make a dexterity save as you have her thrown into the water.
Oh,
You go flying into the water. Wow. So you basically do that, you're just like, so you,
She's real with the bunny.
Bruce Lee's like, "Be like water, my friend," right? So she's, and you go flying into the water. Now, the
So
question
like
I have for
how,
you,
I was gonna say, how far do I go flying?
pretty damn far. The question is, a few feet, probably past where Shala is standing. The question I have for you is, how are you trying to land? Are you just kind of like, good, cannonball? Are you trying to aim for Celeritas in the middle of the pond? Are you trying to face plant? Like, what's your?
I really just want to be like, can I
wonder, can I cannonball in such a way that I try and splash the monster?
But you got different mind, you can belly flop.
Oh, like hit her with the water?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just hit
Why
it.
not?
Yes.
I will ask you to make an acrobatics check. If you could sing a couple of Cirque du Soleil songs while or even some Aerosmith.
So it's a roll plus my dex mod?
Yes.
Kelly, why don't you just barrel it?
Yeah.
Hey,
17.
I did, I tossed
Okay.
the door.
So so you're thrown forward, sort of seeing what happens. You kind of tuck and roll, and then, and the water goes up this way. And as it goes up this way, those of you who are looking, and I think that would be definitely Corinna, Shala.
Oh, yeah.
I think I think all of you would be. I don't, except for Garvin because you're now in the water. But I think the rest of you would be able to see this. All of you see on the splashing water, something is at the front of the edge of the splash.
Yeah, it
It
is.
seems almost like edges of knives.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
The thing comes towards it and just, like hits this. And so the creature, she is stricken, and you see Calorax sitting there with holes, blood, and sort of pouring. And then there's one, and you notice that Frog, and that was like, and Frog is like, just, Doofag still cheering.
We now officially know his name, Killstealer.
So there is a moment of silence, and then rising up from the water is the blue creature again, except again with the blue eyes this time. She says, "Thank you."
Is my head
Thank
above
you,
water?
adventurers."
Am I hearing this?
Yeah, she's actually, I assume you're like, oh, like, you're not, right? And she says, "For months I have fought this foul hag's influence, and I had almost given in to despair. Now this place can begin to be cleansed. Calorax came here some time ago, and took over the pond when I was unaware of the presence. Before I could do something, my area here was corrupted. But there is something more, and it is dangerous. Calorax was working with someone here. I heard only the name, Kesselman Taylor, and she gave her several items. This Kesselman looked for things to start some forbidden ritual. I could find nothing of it except that it had something to do with time. Calorax worked with her and gave her some items, but not the most important one." And she reaches down and she holds above her a glowing blue globe, which is larger than this, about the size of her hands. "This is the gem of awakening. It was given to me by Carnus Miranda himself many centuries ago to protect and keep for the right moment. I have no doubt this is that moment." And she gives the gem, I would say to Garvin, who's just sort of staggering back at this point, but still in the water, and gives you the globe. And she says, "Thank you again," bows, swims back to the center of her pond, and then she slightly rises above it again and says, "Be careful though. The mage you seek to stop is powerful. Remember, she has only her hatred to drive you. You have friendship and love.
Aww.
They are powerful forces more than what she possesses. And both you and she will remember that." And then into the water.
We have friendship and love.
I think each other?
I wouldn't go that far.
Alright, before we leave the pond,
Can we get our weapons?
Cadmus is going to take off his chainmail, wade into the pond and retrieve
Cadmus, wait. Ugh, this is yours.
Let me just rinse that off.
Yeah, unfortunately, the other javelins are not to be found. And as you swim into the middle, you realize this pond is really deep. You don't know how far down it goes, but oh my
So
God.
if you left your armor on, you'd be able to find it.
Always a silver lining from trouble.
So do you think that this blue gem will free our Thaddeus and?
Probably. I'm gonna refill the canteen, the water stand.
Okay.
They say.
And the water, by the way, you can all, I'm so sorry, just one sec. You can notice already actually that the water is actually seems more fresh already. Even though it didn't seem unfresh before, but it just seems like there's a greater flow to the water and it just seems to be moving better. You can hear the waterfall more loudly now than what.
Oh, she's installed a new filter, hasn't she?
Her name was Britta. A new aquarium.
If you leave somewhere, I'm going with you.
Okay,
Is Leslie able to find his dagger around the edge of the room somewhere? The one he threw at the sneak attack? No.
Sadly, no.
Well, I still got 3 out of 5 javelins. Put my armor back on.
Regroup.
Regroup.
Okay.
So are we heading back to the statue now?
I think we should head north. Check out this waterfall.
Well, it seems like what
Why
we
not?
need, it seems like if we need to restart time,
Right.
what we need to find is that lady who has all the stuff, except for the thing.
The girl with all the
that we
gifts.
have, and then we take the stuff that she has with the thing that we have to do the thing.
The thing,
to
but it's not about
restart.
it, and the other thing.
All the
That
things.
time, that- yeah.
All the things.
Yeah.
Why don't we just go back to Thaddeus in the hopes that the water is the floor of life until it awakens?
And then the stone.
Because we need the other thing.
Yeah, they've got the stone.
But maybe we don't.
Oh, all right.
All we're trying to do is wake him up.
Where in the
Wake
hell
him
is
up,
it?
teleport back.
I'm for it. Let's
Okay.
try it.
If
Let's
it
try it.
works, great. If it doesn't,
Don't you
So
think?
what are you doing?
Going back to frozen patties.
Going back to frozen days, okay. Are you going back along previously trodden paths? Like, in other words, the way you came, or are
You
you?
know, we can get there without incident, yes.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying, like, you know, you could try to go a different direction if you wish, you could go back the way you came,
Go back where we came,
okay?
Seems reasonable.
walk around the tree.
Okay, right, and sort of walk around that, so.
Avoid Mr. Talking Tree, yes.
Yeah.
So when you come back actually into that clearing, Stillwater is gone.
Oh, that's right, he headed out to investigate the wall. Wow, he's moving pretty quick for an old tree.
there's something happened to him.
Isn't Stillwater
You say fire.
almost famous?
Yeah, I think so.
Stillwater's also the name of the panda in the Sam Shorts books.
Ah, okay.
All right, so I'm going to move you folks back up here. We're going all the way back up to the circle, okay?
Yep,
Really?
All right.
that is still kind of pulsating there in the corner in the center.
Yes.
So they want to see if the little blue glow can
Yeah.
penetrate.
Just so
the-
you know,
First,
I
we
will
try
have
to
to leave
splash the
in 8
water on
minutes.
him and see what.
8 minutes.
I have to leave at 10:15.
Okay.
Just so you know.
When the party, okay, I'll do that myself. When the party, so when you get back into the circle, you can see Thaddeus Celeritas standing in the same
Yep.
position that he was before. And that seems to be all, it seems to be just normal. So are you moving towards them, or what are you doing? Thaddeus is just,
Touch the judge's hand.
okay. When you step onto the gray stones of the tower's floor, someone begins to laugh.
Oh, shit.
Uh-oh.
That's the lady with the things.
And there is a whisper that you hear.
A what?
A whisperer.
Mice in the forest.
Mice in the forest?
Russ. What have they found? These are all different voices, and you hear them behind your shoulders.
Ooh, that's creepy.
That's creepy.
I punch behind me. Sorry, I'm standing there.
You punch air.
I'm trying to splash some of the water onto Thaddeus.
Okay. You splash some of the water, it just seems to like bounce off, like it doesn't seem to come anywhere close. Did anyone, you just punch? Does anyone just like, as these whisperings? Mice in the forest.
Who has the thing?
Kelly.
Kelly has a thing.
Oh, yeah, I've got the thing in the jig.
Mhm.
Touch him with the thing.
And,
Oh, you can touch him with the thing.
Put the blue ball on his head.
as
I
you,
can with the blue ball.
as,
I touch.
I wasn't responsible for that one.
no, I know, I needed to make it a red one, obviously.
I touched the ball of his arm.
As you were preparing to do this, and you hold up your hand, a woman in a dark green cloak materializes and literally just as if she's walked out of somewhere from the air
Oh, that's
into the clearing. And it's a woman in a dark green cloak who is holding 3 branches and a large hourglass. She steps onto the embankment and into the break in the wall. She has long auburn hair, dark eyes, and pale skin, and she looks neither old nor young. And she looks and she says, her face is contorted in this angry triumph. And she says, "Yes, indeed, what have you found?"
Do I need to bother to provide sense?
An old fool, I see, and she starts walking around him. A meddler and a murderer. An arrogant and judgmental tyrant whose jealousy and desire to look good in the eyes of his students and the city officials drove him to kill a much greater man than he ever could be.
Could I throw a dart at her? Well, you know, evil monologue.
Right. I think you might be able to. You are his lackeys, she says, staring at you as you're like taking out the dart. And she says, or your yellow chalices. For I know she sent you, and somehow you found this place. But no matter. You will pay as surely as she will, and Celeritas.
Divine sense.
Yeah, you can tell that she's definitely evil. Well, she's evil, but the resonance is different. It doesn't feel like Celeritas, like, blah, you know, like evil. This is the reading, it feels confused almost. There is evil there, but she says, I am Kesselman Taylor. I was Vernon Richard's finest student at Harklow Academy. Most of you found him harsh and overbearing, but I found him disciplined and challenging.
Chatty.
You recoiled at what they saw as cruelty, she says, looking at you. I embraced his sternness and rigidity, and I thrived.
Don't they call me the teacher's pet? Jeez.
When
No, you embraced his rigidity.
She says,
Damn! No wonder you were an
Yeah, exactly. When I graduated with honors and departed from my first assignment far from here, I left with his blessing and his care. The blessing of a teacher for a student. And then you see her voice, her face, which has been angry this whole time, just kind of falls, and she says, Father for his daughter. And she kind of glares at all of you. She says, Vernon Richard was my father. My mother died when I was little. And after that, he took care of me. He got the job at Harklow, and I thought he was better. He was happier, more relaxed, less frantic. But something happened, and he returned to the way he was before, but worse. I vowed I would make things easier for him. Now she seems to be just kind of staring off. I began to explore the world of magic, and I found I was good at it. I practiced tirelessly. And he noticed. He taught me slowly and then more. And soon I was ahead of anyone else at my age, anyone even years older than me. I enrolled in Harklow. And then you got involved. First, Vernon Richard was publicly humiliated by all of you in front of this school and placed under arrest by this coward.
Yeah, that was us.
Glaring and glaring. Then he was put on trial and he had his chance for redemption. He told me about this place, this forest, told me his plan, and I agreed to help. What could I have done? I followed his instructions. I came here. I found the Megirolith, just as he said I would. At the appropriate moment, I threw it to him. But you did something, and then you had some branch or wand or something. You touched him with it, and some tree rippled through the floor and pulled my father down with it, and I can still hear him screaming for help.
Yeah.
And you were the great heroes, the saviors of Harklow Academy. And Vernon Richard, who cared about him? Well, I cared. I returned here and resumed the research you began, and found I could stop it from happening if it never happened in the first place. I can return my father to life and get vengeance on all of you. Thaddeus Celeritas will be destroyed and all of you with him. Time will be reversed and Vernon Richard restored to life. History will unfold as it was meant to, and you will be witnesses.
Sorry, I was busy sharpening my pipe. Could you go over that again?
So she just like glares.
I'm throwing my dart.
Okay.
I missed the part after what did the mice find?
Oh, they found the cheese. The cheese that was used to build that speech.
Literal what?
We are sorry for the loss of your
Did you
father.
roll a one?
No,
You
we're
rolled a
not.
You roll a
Has
one?
caused you perspective.
Oh,
So-
if we have to apologize,
Like-
then we'll have to apologize for taking.
And Garvin, you're like. And so there's a dart in your shoulder.
Nice.
Go ahead.
We have friendship and love.
Quit gambling and roll your damage.
The one had to happen.
That's 4.
All right. It's going to be 4 damage.
All right.
So she kind of laughs. I see your party is ready to work together as they always do. A bunch of useless students you always were. And now
Fuck you, we're friends.
Yeah, 2 of us are in the drama club.
So she
got some dust on the blade. Do you mind if I wipe it off on your guts?
So she holds this hourglass high above her and she begins to laugh.
That's not good.
And then you hear
Stab the hourglass.
Okay, so I was gonna say, so you're ready to stab it. Before you can do that, as you're sort of reaching forward, you hear ears of justice! And Doomfang leaps forward and Frug leaps onto Kessiman's arm and knocks the hourglass free. And Kessiman turns and shrieks and then magic missiles and throws them into the war bunny.
No.
And Doomfang hits the ground and lies motionless. And Frog is unconscious, lies unconscious on the ground.
Quick, grab the arm.
I should have been, you bunny!
Okay.
Oh no!
For Derp Strain!
Greg, who's
Yes.
closest to the hourglass?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Who's closest to the hourglass?
Tumble.
Good, forget it. You can be, Calixton, you can be if you want to be. Or, well, I mean, are you going to try to reach the hourglass?
Yeah, and Lasson's gonna tumble to try and catch it so that it doesn't shatter on the ground.
Okay.
Probably didn't call.
All right, I'll have you make an acrobatics check. Let's see if you can get there.
5.
You're like, ha! The hourglass smash. So the hourglass smashes and time itself begins to ripple. You see sort of like everything becomes a little weird and indistinct, and suddenly you begin to see what look like shadows passing through the grove in front of you, the circle in front of you. But they look like they're not paying any attention to you. They are, one of them is cloaked and sort of looks around and up, and then as if it's looking at a wall and sort of points this way and then walks away. And then you see someone which looks actually like Kessiman, who's much more like looking around, like angrily sort of walks off. You see different figures passing by. They're sort of real-ish, but they also sort of shimmer and then vanish as you watch them. And Kessiman laughs and says, "You see, nothing can stop it, nothing!" And sort of yells at all of you, and you can see she kind of rears back, ready to do something. I'll give you a chance to make one single reaction if you want.
Stab her.
Stab.
How far away are we from her?
Probably only 5 feet. Pretty close, 5-10 feet.
Fist of Fury! I'm gonna
Okay.
attack.
All right, then I'd like everyone to roll initiative, please.
Please don't suck. Why do you not listen?
Oh, Jesus!
Dead last.
What do we got? Sorry, Corinne first. Corinne, what do you got?
I have an 18.
18?
I have an 18.
I have an 18. as
Wow.
well.
I too have an 18. All right.
Uno.
Calixton.
Oh, 11.
I'm sorry, 11.
11.
Cadmus is a 1.
Uno.
You're like, I'm ready eventually, shall I?
10.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to ask for Corinne and Lassen. Remind me dexterities again.
My dexterities is 17.
Lassen,
16.
Garvin.
8.
Okay. 8. All right. Okay. Corinne, Lassen, and Garvin. All right. Corinne, you're up first.
I'm sorry?
You're up first.
I'm up first.
Your first 2 acts.
I am going to attack with a flurry of blows and use my keys.
Okay.
Which I think means I get 2 attacks. I think with my unarmed strength, I'm plus 5.
Okay.
Yeah, that 1 is not going to be helpful. And a 7 probably isn't going to be all that helpful. So that's a 12.
Okay. And it's not going to do it. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I do.
And actually, as you make the sort of attack, you notice that there's just sort of a, like, she doesn't even seem to be there. Like you're like, hoo-ha-ha, and it's just air.
Oh,
And you're like, and she laughs.
yeah.
That's going to lead us to Lassen.
Lassen's gonna do Lassen do dancing lights on as a cantrip on her.
Dancing lights or fairy fire? You're talking about.
I
You already
use
used
fairy fire
right?
already, so.
It wouldn't be like a cantrip on somebody. You could use dancing lights around them. You know, that'll be fine.
I don't remember actually if that gives everybody a bonus or not. I will maneuver, I'm using to maneuver myself into sneak attack mode and then use my hand crossbow for sneak attack.
If you're gonna move, you don't have a lot of room to move here, though, Lesson. If you're gonna move around in place, you're probably gonna have to do a melee attack or something similar.
Okay. Use the dagger that
Okay,
I borrowed.
cool.
I borrowed her dagger.
Can we get, by the way, a round of applause for?
Make sure you stop it. Yeah. Make sure you stop it. Okay. Yeah. We got you.
Okay, so you could try to sort of get in position and maybe do a sneak attack, although I don't know if you have a dagger left, because you
I
have more.
borrowed one.
I know. The bluestone. I got the bluestone, yes.
Borrow one from him?
Yeah, she gave me
Yeah, I
her
learned it. I
dagger.
did. I learned
You did?
it.
Okay.
And in
I
All right.
previous scene,
Okay, that's fine.
preparatory dagger borrowing.
I will allow you to do that.
Oh, a natural one.
You're like, what is this dagger? Like, okay. So unfortunately, that does not get the job done. You do, however, hear laughter from Justin. Okay, that is going to lead us to Garvin with Felix on deck. Garvin, by the way, you still have the blue globe, and you could still try to, touch that if you wish. I'm just letting you know you could do that.
Right. Would my sacred flame do anything to her, or no? I thought that was a cantrip.
I mean, you can certainly try if you wish.
You know what? If you want to what?
Well, it's a stone of awakening. Maybe if we can get her to
No, I don't think so. I think that I'm gonna just touch the stone. I'm gonna touch the blue ball to his arm, as I was preparing to do.
Okay.
Or so rudely interrupted
interrupted.
by a monologue.
Right.
So as you touch the gem of this blue gem to him, you see blue light begins to wash over his body.
Oh,
And he's sort of doing this, and then you can see his hand starts to move a little bit.
Okay.
But it's not happening yet. And she sort of screams in anger, "Don't do that!" And sort of shouts at you and seems now to be really enraged with you.
Perfect. Let's push harder.
That's luring them.
And speaking of her, it's her turn. So she is going to stand back and is going to look at you and say, "Put that down!" And is going to command you. I need you to make, please, a wisdom saving throw.
Wisdom saving. Oh, I get a +5 on that. 25.
Wow. So you just feel this sort of this command, and you're kind of like, how about not? And so she kind of glares at you angrily, and she says, "Makes no difference. Time is already changing." And there are more sort of figures kind of beginning to pass, as you can see.
I think we might be under the clock here, guys.
Okay, that's going to lead to, that was Garvin, so Felix. Okay. So go ahead and make your damage rolls, please. 1d4 plus 1 in each case.
2, 6, 3 is 9, 11.
So, air. Just goes right through. And again, she laughs and cackles and,
Who's got the teleporting rock? The portal rock that takes us back to where we were.
Who the hell knows? You did?
are you going to stay where you are, Clarkson? Or try to move back or away? Or
Sure, I'll back away a little.
Okay. Sean, who just left. Have you been given, like, advocacy of his?
He said what he was going to do was sacred weapon and divine smite.
Okay. All right. So let's see the attack happen. We'll see how divine smite goes.
Okay. So with the +2 to attack rolls for 1 minute. For this weapon, which is the long sword.
So that's 10 rounds, right?
Yes, 10 rounds. when he hits, he gets extra fortune. Oh, that would be a 23.
So with a mighty blow, cuts right through air, as if nothing is there at all. And again, you cannot hit someone who no longer is in time. And she laughs. And that leads us to Cadmus, who's finally like, aha. So
what is the status of Garvin and the blue gem and
the blue light is washing over Thaddeus's body, and it seems like he's beginning to move, but not yet.
All right, and the hourglass is shattered.
The hourglass is shattered. The sand of it is on the ground.
And we have.
And she had like 3 other branches, right? From
Correct.
the tree?
Yeah. Which she still has.
Which she still has, but is intangible and yada yada yada.
Right.
And do we have that flask of water?
Yes.
Water skin.
The water skin with the water from the pond?
Yes.
Have we done anything with it yet?
Well, I tried splashing on Thaddeus first and it didn't do anything. Didn't get through the.
Toss me the water skin. Dump the water on the sand.
Okay.
Worth a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So when you dump the water on the sand, you can see that the sort of shimmering continues, but it kind of wavers, and the figures that are moving kind of stop and then start to move slowly again, as if they're like still moving, but they've been slowed.
Like through wet sand.
Scoop up the sand.
Yeah.
Scoop up the sand.
Scoop up the sand.
Or water levels need to stop it. Maybe you gather the sand back together. We'll put time back together. Or we pour it back into the broken hourglass.
Very metaphorical.
Do you still have water in the water skin?
Dump it on.
Yeah, do it again.
Just dump all the water from the water skin.
Okay.
Soak it.
Same effect. So it's they're very slowly moving, but you can see that they're beginning to move even a bit faster even as you're watching them when they're slowed. So it slowed them down. It hasn't stopped them.
I'm buying you whatever time I can. Attacking her ain't gonna do any good. You guys better figure something out.
Corinna, as you prepare for your turn, this is the beginning of the next round, you hear a booming sound coming from the forest. So, striding in and looking, actually striding very quickly, with its roots kind of picking up and then dropping the ground almost as if it's like moving basically through. It comes close and sort of Kissman turns and kind of looks in sort of shock and anger. And the still water reaches down with its hands and picks up the wet sand.
Oh, nice.
And picks it up and kind of compresses it.
Oh.
And Kesselman screams in anger and sends a jet of flame right towards this creature. And still water goes up in flame, still holding this thing, right?
Yeah.
As it's sort of rocking back and forth. You notice that the images stop completely now, as it's sort of rocking back and forth.
Is she any more solid?
She might be.
Let's find
out.
out.
Find out. So go ahead.
It's a new round.
I have another point of key. I'm going to use it for a flurry of blows. Yeah, with a 5 and a 5.
Okay.
Awesome.
So you hit air, but not her air. Did you say hit air? Just generally. Lassen, you're up.
Is Stabber, is Dobby in danger of being stepped on?
Dobby beef cup.
No, Frog and Doomfang seem who knows what happened to Doomfang, but Frog seems to be out of the current line of battle.
Alright, sneak attack on her then with
Okay.
a dagger. 10.
Fortunately not.
The dice have turned on us.
Cleanness. I assume you're going to stay in the same place though, roughly speaking.
So that I can keep sneak attacking?
I guess so. Well, we'll see how long before she turns and finds you, but yes.
Yeah.
Garvin with Clicks Mountain.
How far away am I from her?
About 5-6 feet probably.
Okay. So I've got the stone.
And you notice that he's beginning to move a little more.
Yeah, I keep it on it. I don't know if I'll ever take it away. Right?
But Or I feel like I could like do that and just do like with my warhammer.
You also could, I mean, you don't know whether holding it is required here. You could try to take it away and see, because it's not, you don't know if it's required to have it on there or not.
Okay, so maybe I will keep a tight hold of the blue stone, grab my warhammer, and swing at the bad lady.
Still keeping the stone though close to.
Yeah,
okay.
close.
All right, so I'm going to have you make the attack. It's going to be at -2, since you're not actually looking really
That's fine.
correctly.
But I get a +4 to hit. So
Okay.
12.
Unfortunately, that's not going to do it.
Okay.
So that is also a miss.
It
But
doesn't hit anybody else.
that's true. No one else has been hit. No one was harmed in the making of this round. All right, that's going to lead us to Calixon.
So I'm gonna push on healing in my kit.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to get it to still water.
No.
Okay, so Stillwater, that's, okay, Stillwater right now is Towering Inferno, just so you know. So it's not necessarily the green flame style, but you are taking a risk that you yourself are going to be burned to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you come up to try to give the healing potion to Stillwater, Stillwater, who has her eyes closed and is kind of rocking back and forth, and you can see branches, leaves are crackling like, you know, sort of flames. So, like, how do you want to give it to her? Because, I mean, you know, she...
Drink this.
All right.
Here, this will help.
Okay. And she says, no, be safe yourself. Take yourself from here. Kind of rocks back and forth. You can still try to just be like, shut up, and like force feed it if you wish, but I'm just letting you know that's what she says.
So do potions of healing have to be ingested, or can they be poured on wounds?
They have to be ingested.
So I think this means we need to gather around, and as soon as Thaddeus is free to move, use our little portal.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's what's happening here.
Well, Charlotte gets to do something.
Yeah.
Unless it's,
Charlotte will try again.
unless it's Bad Lady's turn.
Okay.
In the hopes that Kesselman is now physical enough to be injured.
You have to.
That would be a 21.
Okay. This time, the blow strikes. So there is a sort of, and like it sounds like it's supposed to, a staggering blow. Roll damage.
She does 3d8.
Where's the holy?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 14.
Okay. That absolutely hits. She sort of staggers back. And she has this sort of look of surprise and like anger on her face, as she is very clearly solid and in our time at the moment.
Oh, nice.
And she kind of, you know, groans in anger. And at this point, she, let's see, yeah. Oh, it's Charlotte that just went, right, good.
Yeah.
At this point, she looks at you, Garvin, and then sort of looks at you, Calixon, and she holds her hand high, and you can see this globe of fire that's kind of growing.
That's bad.
It looks like she's about to throw it in your direction. Instead, what she actually ends up doing is almost bowling it, like basically rolls it along the floor towards you. So what I need you to do is make a dexterity save for me as this thing goes right towards you.
That's T'Challa, or?
That would be, yes, T'Challa. Sorry, I was saying you, I meant T'Challa.
That would be 6.
Okay. So this sphere enters, and it's going to do.
Oh, that ain't good.
It's going to do 14 points of flame damage, fire damage, and is now in that space. So basically, Shala's got to get the hell out, or is going to take damage as long as she stays in that split. She does this, and then still, you know, obviously hurting, sort of laughs again, and Cadmus, you're up.
All right, first strike with the pike.
Okay.
Nice.
That'd be an 18.
Hit.
Okay. And the damage on that is, let's see, 9, and I'm gonna go for my action surge and attack again.
Okay.
12.
12 is not going to hit. But the 9 damage definitely is a big strike. She kind of staggers back, clutching her shoulder, blood pouring from her wounds now, and she kind of, that leads us back up to turn 3. Corinna, Stillwater now looks like flames are. You can see sap running down the sort of trunk and the whole.
How's Thaddeus doing?
Thaddeus is moving more, is still not all the way back, it seems like, but is definitely like closing in. But
All right, I'm
definitely
gonna
not
whack her.
Okay.
I'm gonna use my last point of key, and I'm gonna do my flurry of blows. Probably not. 11
No.
and 14.
14 will hit.
Oh, well, that's something. How much is my damage bonus to this? Oh, 4. Well, 5 points of damage.
Okay. Total. 5.
Total 5.
Okay. So
yes.
wham! And she kind of takes another step back, and she's now breathing very heavily. Lassen, you're up.
Sneak attack, throw dagger. 10.
Sneak attack miss with borrowed dagger, sadly. You're staying in the same place, Lassen?
Yeah.
Okay. Still waiting to
Actually, you know what? This spot's not working for me. 5 would adjust.
Okay. How about here? Garden.
This time I'm going to turn around and swing with my warhammer.
Okay.
5. How close am I to
To who?
Corinna?
Why?
I'm just asking because I've missed very severely. I just
Oh,
want to
no.
make sure you're
No,
safe.
you don't actually end up hitting.
Okay.
You'd be happy to know.
Okay.
But thanks for presetting.
Yeah, I need to back up. According to this, if I hit a target using the flurry of blows, it must succeed on a DC 13 dex save or be knocked prone.
Okay.
It sure doesn't. She sure doesn't make it.
Oh, so she's down?
Yep.
Can I add a bonus to my sneak attack?
Sure
then?
you can. That what it means is you get an advantage. So you can roll that die roll again.
Natural 20.
Now, the way we handle this in my games is that this is the way it should be, which is max damage. So that also means enemies get max damage, so don't get too bad. Max damage on a crit hit. So that means whatever your damage is, max it out.
19.
Okay. So you do this, and the minute this happens, she sort of staggers back again, and then falls to her knees, and suddenly all the figures that were frozen just vanish. Stillwater, who is still, of course, flaming, kind of just topples over, just falls to the ground. And Kessimon is on her knees and says, "Father, I lost you forever. I lost you for good. I lost everything." So she takes the dagger herself. Now, this is very important, so I want to explain this first. I don't want anybody saying anything, okay?
Okay.
She produces a dagger and she holds it high above her. All of you are close enough that if you wish, any of you can stop her, or none of you can. I want you to tell me what you're going to do by writing it on a piece of paper. You are not to consult anyone else.
Just how or whether we...
Whether. I assume it won't be by throwing a dart. So.
We can write it on the bottom of the
Yep.
page. So it's got our names on it.
Oh, do you need our names?
Yeah, sure, actually.
Because we can just write it on the bottom of our character history sheet, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Just make sure no one sees anyone else's.
Oh.
Pass this down, don't read it. Wonder what Shayla's responsible.
For justice.
Candace is like, Candace is like, God,
Here's a justice.
For justice.
You didn't have to write it on the wall. Of course he did.
No, yeah, I need either or. You can do that
Okay.
after. You can definitely do that.
Aaron's writing a novel.
I'll write two of them.
Two novels?
Well, one for them and one
Oh, that's right, one for sale and
We'll
one.
begin with a long discussion on the origin of species.
That kills it right away.
Okay. Now I have a question for the audience. How many in the audience would savor? How many would not savor? So, how many are mad that I forgot about this being thrown in the dark? All right, so.
Dr. Wilson. Well, technically it is Dr. Wilson.
Hey, the university issued it. I don't know. All right. So this is what happens.
Doctor, give me the news.
Okay. So Calixin does nothing and watches. I will talk about that in a minute. Cadmus does nothing in this opera, just watches. Lassen steps forward. Corinna steps forward. Garvin steps forward. And Shala steps forward. Shala knocks away the dagger. Lassen throws his cloak around her to stop. Garvin reaches for her wrist. Corinna basically is like that. Right?
I wasn't that specific.
Okay, so her dagger and everything else has been pulled away.
Okay.
Now I have to ask Cadmus what you're going to do or not, because you've just seen what your companion says.
Hold back.
She's just clearly broken, like she's just sobbing.
If she's captured, stand down.
But she's wrapped in a brightly colored cheerful cloak.
Yes, no, I mean, it's definitely.
Oh dear God,
As you're sort of looking at her, sort of, broken and sobbing, you hear from behind you, well, I seem to have arrived at an unusual time. And you turn to see Thaddeus Celeritas, who is now sort of moving normally. And he sort of comes up and he says, I see that I have you to thank for my rescue. It appears that I am forever to be in your debt, one way or the other.
really, we just need to graduate, get the hell out of school.
He nods with a smile, and he looks down at Kesselman, and he says, "And what of her?"
Lassen is comforting her and saying something about messed up family dynamics because he knows a little something about that. And so, yeah, he's trying to comfort her. He's actually holding her in his arms and talking to her and saying how sorry he is about what's happened and everything.
So Kesselman continues to sob and pour out her heart to you as you do this. Celeritas looks at each of you in turn and then says, did all of you agree with your decision to keep her here alive? It's not a question of like accusation, it's a question of question.
Sure.
Wait. Technically that depends. Let's check on the bunny. Is the bunny gonna make it?
Yeah.
Doomfang is beyond rescue. Frog is not. Frog is not beyond rescue. The frog looks like he can be revived.
Oh my God.
I have a potion of healing. I give it to him.
What the hell? You got a cleric! Who's never cast a healing spell?
It's a perfect record.
Oh God!
You've never been dead!
So Frog sort of is like, and he sort of sees all these things, and then his eyes fall on Doomfang.
Oh!
And he kind of has his eyes sort of.
So it's up to you, Frog. She killed Doomfang. We execute her, or do we let her live?
And he kind of crawls over, kind of pets roughly, and he turns back and he says, if we kill her, we're no better than she is.
Sure we are.
He turns around. So he turns around and is like, no, we're not. And he kind of goes back and he says, and my name is From.
Right, Brown.
So he does that. And I want to jump forward a little bit.
Okay.
Frog is revived, Doomfang is gone,
Oh.
as, of course, is Stillwater, which is a great loss for the forest. But the forest gnome, although heartbroken, views Doomfang's sacrifice as a worthy one, and he invites you all to a funeral in honor of his lost friend.
Yeah, we kind of gotta go gradually.
Well, in the day afterward.
Oh,
he says.
that's
Assuming that you, those of you who wish to attend can.
Yeah.
Who does attend? Does everybody attend?
Yeah.
Okay. So, assuming all of you attend, he reveals his new mount in training.
Oh, no.
Yes.
And you see it is one of Doomfang's own kits.
Oh, that sly devil.
Its ear floppy, just like its father. And he has named this rabbit Death Ear. Stillwater's destruction has a powerful effect upon the forest, and it will be some time before the southern expanse is the same. However, there are other things that were saved. For example, Elishrin, the water nymph that you saved in the magic pond, her positive influence continues to remain. And of course, you have yourselves, not only your degrees, but the gratitude of Yenner Chalice and Thaddeus Celeritas and all of Parkflow Academy. Right before you are to depart, you were summoned for the last time to Thaddeus Celeritas' office with Yenner Chalice standing behind him. And he says, of course you may go anywhere you wish, and I will write you letters of recommendation for wherever you choose to go. But, well, I wanted to mention that I do seem to have some openings in the faculty ranks. And I wondered, he says with eyes sparkling as Yenner Chalice smiles, if you might be interested in joining us. There is, for instance, a certain wing of our library which I think would like to be permanently opened. The Blessed Library, I'm thinking of calling it. What do you think?
That sounds lovely.
And that is the end of the fifth month.
I teach Spanish at a women's college.
I would like to send a couple of quick shout outs to people. First of all, I want to thank my Twitch channel. Yay, Twitch! I especially would like to thank our amazing players. I want all of you to give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you guys for amazing. Thank you. It was my great pleasure. I hope we can do another thing like this in years to come. If you enjoyed it, please tell everyone that it was cool and you wanted to go see it. And one last thank you to Alligator Alley, which is putting this game out. Does anyone have one of those things?
Yeah.
This will be out. If you like this, you can see it in full form, including the first two parts. It is coming out towards the end of August, beginning of September. It has not only this, but contributions of books like the ones I read you. In case you're curious, the one that Beth read was actually contributed by John Wick, famous game writer. The Book of the Balance I mentioned is contributed by Kat Rambo. Aaron Rosenberg has one in there. So there's a lot of amazing writers for this. And again, this was kickstarted with the thanks of my community, members of my community who are here and over there. So Tales and Poems will be out at the beginning of the month. Thank you all very much, and almost not quite the end of the con. I will see those of you who are going to be around tomorrow, but otherwise, have a good night. Thanks, everybody. You got tickets, yeah? All right. Bye, Twitch peoples. I love you all. I'll see you soon. There they are. Fury Fire Nihilus. It's all true. It's been revealed. All has been revealed. Okay. All right. Bye, folks.